they may be willing to be a little bit more patient with their driving. Here though, yes, it's only one race, but you've got to make those chances count because they don't come that often around this track. So there will be opportunities there, and you maybe see a little bit more desperation in some of those drivers.
Yeah, just to give everyone a little bit of a recap in terms of the point standings, it is Peter Berryman top of the pile for now. He leads by 1 point over Thomas Gibson, so things very tight in terms of the championship. You got Pekka Toivonen in P3 with Simone Maria Marciano. He was the race winner first time out to start off the season. He's in 4th on 50 points, but things still very tight mid-table, only single point separating some of those drivers sort of on the border in terms of getting themselves into prize-paying positions. So this is shaping up to be a pretty close series, but we are in its early stages. But if that can carry through all the way through the 10 rounds that we have, Paul, then this is going to be shaping up to be a great one. Yeah,
absolutely. And these drivers are getting an opportunity out there to race in support races for the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup, and it's almost as if it's a stepping stone for those drivers to make themselves known. A lot of these drivers will be known with some of the big teams, but there's a couple of drivers that are maybe trying to make a name for themselves as well in this series. So it's a great opportunity for people to get that opportunity of putting on a good display, and of course be able to get a little bit of money out of this as well.
Yeah, there's not just money for the season win and the, well, doing well in the season. You also get money if you're on the podium for these individual races as well. Ask Thomas Gibson about that. He has $500 to his name thanks to winning last time out at Barcelona, and he's going to look to perhaps maybe not add to his tally in this one because he is actually taking part in this, although he is down quite a bit in terms of the practice times. But these guys are in qualifying now, and Gibson certainly looking to try and get back near that podium, especially he's a Brit.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's an odd one, isn't it, with sim racing? You would imagine that the British drivers, they will know these tracks better. Generally, that's what would happen in the world of real life racing, where those drivers who come through the national championships in their country will know those tracks intimately. But in the world of sim racing, it doesn't quite translate as much. If you've been, say, racing in series which are based in and around the UK, then yeah, you will have raced those circuits more. So you're on a bit more of an even keel, a bit more of an even footing there for all of these drivers to be able to race in this. So the national advantage that you would normally see in a series like this, it won't really come into effect. But to be honest, he'll want to do well anyway, because it is a British track and he is a British driver. He's not the only one out there, of course. Pete Berryman, another one out there as well. And they've got this opportunity to do well and to get themselves in a good position. And quite frankly, right now, he wants to get himself a good championship standing going into the next round.
Here we go then. The timer that you saw was for the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. This, though, the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, the green flag will drop in about 8 or 9 minutes time. As you can see, qualifying out there for the moment. And we'll get to see Peter Berryman, I believe, there heading his way through the first sector to start his lap. We've already had a couple of flying laps come through, but due to the getting the tires into the operating window here, it's going to be the second lap that these guys do, which is going to be the faster of the set, and that's exactly what Berryman is on now.
Yeah, it was Berryman coming up there to McLean's. Tough right-hander to get right. You want to use all of the curb there on the left, and then up the hill. It's a quite an undulating track is Donington Park. Coppice, get that first apex right. It's a double apex corner because you want to get the apex mid corner as well, so a second apex, then run it out wide down Starkey Straight heading towards the S's. This is a little bit quicker than I remember it being back in the day, but these drivers really do fly through the chicane there, and then down. This is the Melbourne Loop. This is the Grand Prix layout, and as we head on through the hairpin, uphill once again towards Goddard's, then the final corner. It's a tricky hairpin to get right because as you're turning across, it dips downhill, does the track, so the car naturally wants to understeer through there and out the final corner. Then what's Pete Berriman's time going to be like then as it comes across the line? And it's good because it's at the top of the standings.
Yep, it is. The rest of the drivers across the start-finish line then, but Gibson does not hold... Berryman doesn't hold on pole position. Gibson doesn't get it either. It's Cooper Webster. That's provisional pole position for the moment as the rest of the drivers quickly head their way through across the start-finish line to complete their laps. Webster still holding strong at pole position. I don't think anyone else is quite going to be able to challenge in this situation, but Cooper Webster, what a lap. But Camilio Pezzoli just goes one better. Pezzoli to pole position at Donington Park. My word, that is very, very close indeed in terms of the lap times. That is less than 100th of a second separating P1 and P2.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant how close this field is in this championship. I can tell you that all the way down to 25th, covered by 1 second. So, you know, it's a competitive field, what we're seeing out there once again. And those opening laps of the race are going to be very, very busy out there. The drivers on cold tyres as well at the start of the race, they're going to be struggling for grip. Down through the crane of curves is going to be a bit of an issue because it is downhill, it undulates downhill, and the cars want to get a little bit light through there on the colder tyres. And so we could see some action down in towards the old hairpin on lap 1, and especially down into the S's and the 2 hairpins at Melbourne and Goddard's as well.
About an hour away from the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, but only a couple of minutes away from the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. Qualifying is done, and we'll wait for that session to get changed over. It's a 20-minute race here today at Donington Park, and it can be quite fraught with action at times. And, well, Pezzoli, pole position in this one. Cooper Webster on that front row as well. So those are kind of 2 names that I didn't really expect to be challenging for pole position, but they're there on the front row. Of course, they did pretty well last time out at Barcelona, maintaining inside the top 10, inside the top 5, but what a time to turn up.
Yeah, absolutely. Quicker than the warm-up times as well. So if you're going to go quicker, qualifying is the place to do it. And that's exactly what Pezzoli and Cooper Webster have done as well. So it's going to be an interesting start to this race. I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be a bit of excitement, a bit of drama, and a 20-minute race, it always proves to be a really good action-packed start to the afternoon's action.
Yeah, so I certainly can't wait for it. We do have to wait a couple of minutes though, but we'll get to see these Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 cars roll their way around here in just a couple of moments time. But points leader right now, Peter Berryman, starting in P4. I don't think he'll be complaining too much about that, Paul. He's still in a pretty good position to be able to make things happen. And of course, over the course of a season, it's more the consistency that counts.
Yeah, we mentioned it last time out, didn't we, that consistency right across the season is what wins you a championship. It's all well and good getting wins here and there, but if you end up getting involved in incidents or getting involved in events of races where you're not as strong and you end up finishing mid-pack, that hurts your chances of a championship. So being consistently up there in the top 4, top 5 is crucial for Peter and for everybody in this championship that's wanted to fight for the championship. But definitely, he's shown consistently that he is really quick in this car as Peter, and he'll be hoping to maybe progress forward a couple of spots as well.
Yeah, we'll certainly look to see if he does so. And, of course, race winner round 1, Simone Maria Marciano, starting in P7 here today. But he's hoping for a little bit of a better time here at Donington Park than he was able to manage at Barcelona. He had a very poor round number 2, so round number 3 for Simone is going to be a recovery one.
Yeah, and that was it. I was about to mention that it was a poor event for him last time out. So it's going to be a tricky one for him to try and go up through the field, and yeah, basically he's shown that he's quick, and he's shown that he's quite an exuberant driver. But I mean, I look at his practice time compared to what he's actually qualified with. He's nearly 0.4 of a second slower than his warm-up time. So he's got pace there, he just wasn't able to get it together for the qualifying session. So that's interesting to see whether he does end up moving through the field and getting forward. But he was, in practice session at least, the quickest driver out there on a single lap. Now, whether that included any running wide out of the old hairpin and picking up a off-track penalty, we don't know, unfortunately. Whereas in qualifying, if you end up picking up an off-track penalty, that's that qualifying lap invalidated. So you've got to drive a little bit within yourself in qualifying to make sure you do get a qualifying time in. But at the same point, we know he's got pace there.
Yeah, we really do. It just wasn't able to be shown in qualifying, but he's hoping that he's going to be on the front foot when it comes to this upcoming race. We're about 30 seconds away from setting the grid, and then a further maximum 2 minutes from getting the green flag here in this one. So not a lot of time left to try and prepare yourself for the start of this event. And Pezzoli, in first pole position of the season for him, will be looking to try and get away clean and get through the first couple of turns completely and utterly unscathed. But for drivers near the back of the field, namely Arthur LeHook down in P30, he's going to have a lot of cars to try and get through on if he wants to get to where he usually runs. He had a very, very poor qualifying time. That puts him plumb last on the starting grid. Speaking of the starting grid, though, let's take a look at it. It's Camilio Pezzoli on pole position here with Cooper Webster also on that front row. Thomas Gibson in P3 with Peter Berryman in P4. Mikael Gard in P5. Sasha Gola in P6. We've got Simone Maria Marciano starting P7 for Altus Esports. Charlie Collins starts in P8. Corentin Gunes in P9. Antiohola starts inside the top 10. Emanuele Petri starts 11th with Kim Eriksson in P12. Samuel Lebert starts in 13th. Jake Burton in 14th. Niels Koch in P15 here today. Leon Rudinger in P16. Moreno Sarica starts in 17th for this race at Donington Park. Oscar Mangan starts 18th. Maxim Ramstein in P19. Pekka Toivonen starts in 20th. Ricardo Ferreira in P21. Simeon Lynch, P22 for him. Rafael Silva in P23. Sander van der Velde in P24. Nick Schultz-Wisserman in 25th. Dakota Fripp in 26th. Laurent Miskiewicz in 27th. Daniel Muth starts 28th. And you got Lapjean and LeHook as the very final row of the starting grid for round number 3 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. We're just about 20 seconds away from getting the green flag. Still waiting for the poleman to take himself to the starting grid. Pezzoli, he has been able to get there. Cooper Webster, P2. We got Thomas Gibson, P3, and Peter Berryman in P4 to start this one. So the clock does start to count down, and now we'll get the green flag at Donington Park. We're racing in the Cayman GT4 doors. Cooper Webster's gotten a good start in towards turn number 1 at Redgate for the first time. Thomas Gibson and Peter Berryman. Berryman's been tagged around by Mikael Gard. He's out into the kitty litter, and he has to cycle all the way to the back of the field. Mikael Gard and Sasha Gawler down the Craner curves for the first time, and cold tires coming into effect as Gawler has to try and keep a hold of that car. He's somehow able to maintain the position coming through the old hairpin, and now Marcheno wants to get into the action. He's on the back of this as your top 2 breakaway.
Yep, absolutely. The top 2 pulling away. Interesting to see that our pole sitter didn't end up actually taking the start of the race. He's had to start from the pit lane, so he's all the way down in 30th position. So Pete Berryman and Pezzoli, the 2 faster drivers in this particular qualifying session, all the way to the back of the grid. But as you mentioned, the lead 2 of Webster and Gibson pulling away, and it's Mikael Gade who is trying to reel them in. We've got the number 10 there, Charlie Collins, making moves on Kim Eriksson. He's made it up now into 8th place, with Eriksson under pressure now. We're down the inside. Samuel Libert is also other drivers as well. Look at this. This is what we expected down into the Melbourne hairpin. 3 wide into there, under braking, and everyone seems to have made it through there.
Yeah, that's actually kind of surprising considering how all fanned out they were into there. And is there more contact in the final corner? Yes, there is. Ferreira's around. It causes everyone to stack up at the back of the grid through the final corner. That's not what we want to see. We wanted to see fantastic action and not crashing coming through there. But that's just what happened there at the very back of the running order for the moment. But looking towards a couple of these Alta C Sports cars at the moment, there's Simone Maria Marcheno and Antia Holep trying to follow on to the back of Gawler and Gard. But those guys have calmed down just a little bit for now. But the mid and rear half of the grids, man, they really want to take this race by its horns.
Yeah, the intensity is off the charts near the back. Half of the hook has had a run down pit road as well. But yeah, a couple of drivers in Goddard's. It's a tricky track. It's a tricky corner on the track is Goddard's, and we'll have a look at the replay of this one. So we'll have a look at this one now. So Goddard's, it pretty much goes down to a one-line corner, but there's contact on the entry into it, and before you know it, it all stacks up. They all get involved in each other, and that's what happened there. So it happened into the corner in the braking zone, but as I say, Goddard, it's quite tricky because you want to try and hug that inside line, or else you just end up pushing out wide and ended up getting slow off of the corner and it costing you time.
Yeah, there we go. So we've seen that one. 60 minutes, 47 seconds still left in this race. You can see the mid-pack still very much stuck together in a bit of a drafting train, and we discussed this at Barcelona. There's not that much of a draft in these cars, but seemingly able to keep people together. Petri down the inside of Rudinger. That is for P number 13 out there on circuit. Petri's been able to work his way through at Redgate. It was a late move, but it was a competent one.
It was a good move, was that, into Redgate, but that's one of the favourite move making places right there, down into Redgate. It's a heavy braking zone. Got to get your braking right into there, and if you can duck out late, go for the inside, you can get that move done. But everyone, really, you don't really go too wide down through the Craner curves, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Everybody's just behaving themselves through that section of track. But now down the back straight, down towards the chicane, through the S's, you lead 2 there. Webster and Gibson pretty much joined at the hip there. They're that close, but the others behind are slowly just eking in the 10th here and a 10th there to catch up, to make it a big train.
Yeah, they are. So your leaders, despite the 2-car breakaway they were able to manage in the early stages of the race, they have been caught up here. Mikael Gard's been putting in some decent laps to be able to make that one happen. Gawler and Marcheno, they were very close coming through the final corner. Marcheno might be able to look for a move here in towards turn number 1, just at the backer shot there. He has to go around the long way into turn number 1. We won't quite get to see it, unfortunately, but Gawler just about able to defend the move.
Yeah, so Marcheno is putting the pressure on for 4th place. Sasha Jobe is under all sorts of pressure. Round through Old Hairpin. You've got to carry the speed to carry it all the way up to McLean's, and you can get a better run through there. But if you're smart and you're defensive and you're driving, you can hold that inside. But there goes Marchena. Dive to the inside late on. You can hang it around there. There's contact between the two of them. Goalie ends up in the tyre barrier, and Marchena is spun around, dropping down the order fast.
Yeah, there we go. We'll get a replay of it, as that was a hopeful move for Marchena. He's been a driver that's known to get maybe a little bit over-aggressive at times, and unfortunately for him, it's happened again as he decides to send it. Absolutely send it down the inside there, and Jobe, he wasn't expecting a move like that at all. He was taking the regular line into the corner, and they just come into a bit of a tangle coming off. There's not a lot of space to work with coming through there. 2 into 1, and well, both those cars really hoping that didn't turn out that way.
To be honest, that's more of a racing incident than anything. It's just how it is, unfortunately, that those two cars came together like that. With the cars coming around McLean's there, so we've got a spinner in the final corner, by the way. I don't know who that was. Berryman. It was a Pete Berryman, so his recovery drive is not going very well here. He's had issues down at Goddard's, but he's back up and running again, but down there in 22nd place. So, yeah, issues for Pete. And it's not going well for him at all. We'll have a look at the replay, see what happened here then. So it's into Goddard's, onto the brakes. Is somebody going to get a bit ambitious? Oh, got a tag from behind, did the 16. Lynch. So yeah, the 16 of Lynch got a tag from behind, which then forced him into Pete. And that spun him round, but he's back up and running now.
Yeah, that was just the concertina, in fact, into the final turn. Miskewitz was going for the move on Lynch. Lynch felt the need to defend. Little bit of front-to-rear contact between Lynch and Miskewitz, and then that sent Lynch into Berryman. So Berryman had absolutely nothing to do with that. He was not the instigator, but unfortunately he was the driver that came off the worst in that one. Unfortunately, that's how racing goes sometimes. But back to the front of your field, though. Cooper Webster still leads this one from Thomas Gibson, from Mikael Gard in that order. But with 12 minutes remaining, there's still a decent amount of time for all of this to change.
Yeah, we're not even halfway through this race, are we? And Webster has controlled things at the front there, not pushed too hard. Just set his own personal best lap time. In fact, I think that is actually the fastest lap of the race that he's just done, a 33.498. So definitely Webster is just feeling comfortable at the front, and Thomas Gibson, as much as he wants to put the pressure on, he's just having to be patient here. But this is one thing about being up at the front. You've got to be patient. You've got to size up when your opportunities come, but you can see that gap is actually growing now at 0.7 of a second.
Yeah, steadily being started to eke out as Webster keeps the rest of the field behind him for all intents and purposes, up to 0.8 of a second now. It was just under 0.7 of a second coming across the start-finish line the last time around. So he's doing a good job to try and give himself that little bit of a buffer zone required just to really calm his nerves and make sure he isn't under pressure coming into the last 10 minutes of this race. And that's a luxury that a lot of drivers want. They want that big buffer zone behind them so they don't have to worry every single corner. But look at this little battle then further back in your pack. I didn't quite spot who that one was, but they're trying to give us some good action.
Marina Sarika and Pekka Toivonen, they're battling it out for 13th place. Marina Sarika, one of the new drivers into the Williams Esports team, is in that mid-pack, and he's slowly been progressing forward, but it's not been the progression I think he would have been happy with. But he's in there, he's in the top 15, and he'll be trying to get forward a few more positions by the end of this race.
Yeah, hopefully that's going to be the objective trying to be searched for. But having a look at the biggest movers so far, we have Antiohola up 6, up into P4. Kim Eriksson's up 6 as well. He's got himself into P number 6, so hey, that one works out for him. Pekka Toivonen up 6. Miskiewicz, though, is up 10 positions from where he started, so he's been on a bit of a charge so far this race. But the biggest loser, of course, Camilio Pezzoli, did not take the start despite being in pole position. He's down 23 positions in P24. He had to start that car from the pit lane due to missing the grid.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You get a set amount of time to be able to get yourself onto the grid. 2 minutes in this race, to be precise. But he unfortunately missed that 2 minutes. Meant that he had to start from the pits with a 20-second stop and hold before he could set off. So that really put him at a huge disadvantage. And he's all the way down the field. Looking at car 10, that's Charlie Collins, battling with Kim Eriksson and Cortine Guinness as well. Heading into Goddard. Oh, it's a place he can make the move. A little bit of contact. Oh, a bit more contact there, but paint rubbing. And but away he goes again. And Collins, just feeling how that car feels after those couple of knocks, seems fine and is carrying on. And Eriksson, in fact, is about to lose another place.
He has lost another place. That's Samuel Lebert heading his way through. So Kim Eriksson's certainly not going to be a very happy bunny about how that pass was managed into the final turn. Lots and lots of contact. But it is Charlie Collins through, and Kim Eriksson, yeah, he's going to be feeling pretty frustrated at that, because of course he wants to have clean racing and not to have cars banging into his doors and bumpers. Yeah,
nobody wants to get the cars banging into them, but when you've got close pack racing like this, you are going to get a little bit of contact, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It wasn't like it was a complete sort of punt to pass. It was just the two of them getting door rubbing side by side, a little bit of bumping. They could carry on, and they certainly are at the moment. But Eriksson was the biggest loser out of that one. He has got Jake Burton not that far behind, with a whole queue of cars behind him as well. So you're all going the way back to Marina Saric, all the way down to possibly Oscar Mangan in 15th. So huge train of cars now stuck behind the 12 of Samuel Lebert.
It is a pretty tight train indeed. Eriksson, though, he's still kind of stuck behind Lebert. Here goes deep on the brakes into the final corner, tags up the back of Lebert through there, gives him the hurry up, and well, now as a result of that, Kim Eriksson might lose yet another position, because Jake Burton's looking around the outside into Redgate. Can he go deep on the brakes into here? No, he's just going to look for that cutback, try and make things happen through Hollywood and through Carina Curves. It looks like he's just about able to gain the ground required. Side by side down the hill they come into the old hairpin. Burton on the inside has just about been able to make that one complete. Big shot to the rear bumper from Kim Eriksson. He's getting incredibly tilted at the moment, and here comes Niels Koch looking to try and get both of them done, coming through the middle sector, but he can't make any further progress as things are heating up back here. My word.
Yeah, business is picking up here in this opening race, and my goodness, it's great action here in the mid-pack. But Kim Eriksson getting bumped and barged. I will say it was a little cheeky of Samuel Lebert to touch the brakes after the first contact, giving it a little bit of a brake check through Goddard's, but able to stay in front. And Eriksson now, it's all manner of defensive. He's not had the best run through the chicane, and he knows it. He's had to pull over to the inside to try and protect his position. But around the outside, contact from behind. It was going to happen eventually, and unfortunately it's Petri who seems to have got involved in that one.
Rudinger got his braking all wrong, and there was only one target that he was going to hit, and that was Petri in the unfortunate position of just being in the wrong position coming into the braking zone of the hairpin. You'll see it up on screen. Rudinger in that green car, just misses his braking points, and there's only one direction he was going to go.
Absolutely, and Petri, the unfortunate one out of that one. Dropped down to 19th now as Petri out of all that. So it has broken up that little bit of a gaggle of cars for the time being, although Marina Saric now up to 11th place. Not that far behind Niels Koch, but you've got the 99 there of Oscar Mangan just at the back of this pack. Just sitting there waiting. There's 5 minutes remaining, so a quarter of the race yet to go. There's still plenty of time in this one, Connery, for even more fireworks to be set off.
I think we've had more fireworks so far this race as we've had in the first 2 races combined. So our little sort of conjecture before the race that this one might be a bit more interesting, certainly turning out to be correct for now. There's your mid-pack train once again. Oscar Mangan is on the back of that in the blue and green machine, as he's got Pekka Toivonen, he's got Rudinger ahead of him as well further down the train. But these guys just taking a little bit of a respite, but I'm sure they'll decide to give us some more frantic action soon. But back towards the front, there's the race lead battle. Webster, Gibson, Guard, Ahola in that order. These guys haven't really been scrapping it out as much as the mid-pack has, but they're certainly starting to bunch up right now, unless my eyes are deceiving me.
No, they are, because Gard has been on an absolute mission these last few laps. 33.297 he got on that last lap, compared to Thomas Gibson's 33.4, and the leader, Webster's 33.5, as Ahola having a bit of a moment in the background at the old hairpin, but carrying on. That'll cost him just a few tenths there, but 2 seconds covering your first 4 cars. This could be an interesting end to this one.
Yeah, it could very well be. It just requires that spark to ignite everything, and then we'll get a fantastic battle inside the podium positions. But you can see Ahola, though, just starting to drop off the back of this one. He had a big moment coming through the exit of the old hairpin out into the grass, so he's lost a decent chunk of time as a result of that. And with only about 2 laps remaining by my calculations across the start-finish line, that's going to be some time that he really wishes he had around about now.
Yeah, it's just put things a little bit out of his grasp. He's got to hope that the drivers in front start tripping over each other and start battling out for the lead or even second place. So that's what he's got to hope here, to try and get back to the back of this queue. But the front 3 across the line, lap times, I'm just having a look at my timing screen. So 33.3 for your front 2 and a 33.5 for 4th place. To the leader, Cooper Webster, once again just cutting a few hundredths of a second a little bit faster that last time.
Yeah, just about able to extend that advantage. And 2 laps to go then. Gibson hasn't been able to gain the ground required, as you see that Alta C sports car stretching its legs over the Core Sim Racing orange and white machine that's trying to chase it down. You have Prologue React Esports, Mikael Gard in P3 there as well, in that blue Porsche Cayman. But he, like you said, he's been the one that's been really gaining a lot of time in this little group towards the end of the race. But is it going to be too little too late, because he's not locked onto the back of Gibson as much as he would like?
Yeah, he's given it everything, absolutely everything, to try and get up to the front, but Gibson has dropped back, and this is Gade's opportunity to maybe get a second place here. He could be on for a chance, but he's got to have the lap of his life through this final lap. I think the leader has just pulled out enough to be able to be a little bit more comfortable, but he cannot rest up. He needs to carry on and keep on pushing. As they're about to start the last lap, you can see that Gade's view on the left-hand side doesn't look that close. In fact, he's dropped back a little bit from Thomas Gibson, and he's coming under a little bit of pressure from Antti Ahola.
Yeah, he is. So, final lap then in this one. 4 cars at the very front, but all kind of spread out at this stage. So it might just require a mistake from one of your drivers to really shake things up here at the front of the field. But what a drive it's been for Cooper Webster. He inherited the race lead on the very start due to Pezzoli not getting himself to the starting grid and having to start from the pit lane. So a P2 in qualifying becomes P1 for Cooper Webster, and as long as he can get this last sector clean, it'll be P1 in the race as well. 20 seconds left remaining. That for sure will expire by the time they come through the final corner. So Webster, as long as he nails the brakes for the chicane, nails it for Melbourne and then Goddard's, and he should be able to take this race win. But Gibson's giving it a good try here. He's trying to close in that gap and goes very deep on the brakes into Melbourne, but it's simply too far back for Gibson. Just one more corner to go, and Cooper Webster will be able to win this race. Clean through here, and then it's a run to the start-finish line. Cooper Webster across the line to win round number 3 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. The rest of the field heading their way across the line now, as there's Charlie Collins heading their way through. Top 5 finish for them. Quentin Gunes in P6, the tight mid-pack battle that we had between Burton, Ericsson, Koch, Sarika. Well, Burton comes on top of the pile there as he finishes in P8. But you know, we had a pretty frantic middle portion of the race there, Paul, in the middle of your pack, which gave us some great action.
Yeah, the drivers out there were giving us a good show, and a couple of instances that I would have preferred not to have seen, if I'm honest. But again, you know, these drivers, they've put on a really hard attacking display out there, and you know, incidents will happen in races, and when it's so close, you're gonna get that little bit of rubbing, a little bit of contact. But at the end of the day, it was a really entertaining race.
Here are your official race results from round number 3 at Donington Park of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. Cooper Webster by 0.6 of a second wins over Thomas Gibson. He gets $500 in his bank account for that as well. Mikkel Gard on the podium there, as he'll gain 2 positions to finish in P3. Antti Ahola, though, gains 6 positions from P10 on the starting grid to P4 in the official race results. Charlie Collins with a top 5 as well. Quentin Gunes in P6, Samuel Libert P7, Jake Burton finishes in P8, Kim Ericsson in 9th, and Niels Koch will round out the top 10 with a gain of 5 from where he started. Moreno Sarika in P11, Pekka Toivonen gains 8 up into P12. Leon Rudinger in P13. Oscar Mangan P14. Simone Maria Marciano, a hopeful move, didn't quite work out in the early stages of that race. He started 7th, he finishes in P15. Laurent Miskiewicz in P16, Simeon Lynch in 17th, Dakota Fripp in 18th, Petri 19th, Berryman, from what was looking like a hopeful race for him, goes from P4 to P20. Daniel Muth, you got Camilio Pezzoli that had to start from the pit lane despite getting pole position due to missing the grids. You got Gore in P23, Lehuc P24, Ferreira P25, Ramstein P26, and Silva rounding out the cars on the leading lap in P27. And those cars that finished 1 lap down or more, Yannick Lapshan, Nick Schultz-Wisserman, and Sander van der Velde bring things down to P30 there. So that's round number 3 of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge at Donington Park done. And now we move on to the main event, the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup, Will. And, well, if this race is anything to go by, then it's going to be close quarters action.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I'm having a look, and some fireworks going on right now between Sasha Goyle and Simone Maria Marciano. And over that incident, well, 2 different opinions, shall we say. Sasha Goyle claiming that Marciano's taking different lines. On the other hand, Marciano's saying, what? We're going side by side. That's a polite way, and the only way that I'm allowed to say that without getting myself into a lot of trouble. But Paul, you have an opinion on this.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, he's got the inside line. He's got to the apex. It's not like he's dive bombed and missed the apex entirely. They've gone side by side, and side-to-side contact has been made. It's a racing incident, in my opinion, at the end of the day. It's one of those things that can unfortunately happen when those cars are so close together out there on track.
Yeah, and of course, that is one of these things about Donington Park as well. I was talking to the guys over at Radio Show Limited yesterday who are running coverage of another event with us on RaceSpot today. And as soon as they saw the Melbourne hairpin and Goddard as another hairpin, first thing they said to me, Connery, is, well, there's going to be some action in this race. And not going to lie to you, I think both in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge and later on in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, if I could get a big red pen and circle that final section, I would do.
And typically, we've seen cars able to keep themselves closer together in the Porsche 911 Cup GT3 cars than they are in these Cayman GT4s. So, if they're close enough coming down into these heavy braking zones, then some of the drivers throughout that Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup field, they're the type of drivers that, well, if you give them even a slight opportunity, they're going to stick their nose in there. So there'll be a lot of shenanigans coming through turn 11 and turn 12, that's for sure.
Yeah, and of course, the S is down at turn number 9. That will also be an interesting part of the racetrack as we work through our 2 race meeting event here for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing, the 3rd round of the championship, or the 3rd race meeting of the championship. And for those of you who are new to the series, hello, good afternoon. You've just been watching the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, which serves as the support race to the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. They were running in the Cayman GT4s. Of course, we move up to the big boys for the Supercup, which the green flag is exactly 30 minutes away. We have got plenty to talk about. But Red Bull domination at Zandvoort, race meeting number 1. Team Redline domination at Circuit of Barcelona, Catalunya, a couple of weeks ago. Max Benecke and Max Verstappen, the first 1-2 for Team Redline in 5 years. And I can't understate that point enough, Connery, because there are some people that be thinking, oh, you're just bringing up the hype train. Yes, I might be. But 5 years they've waited for a 1-2 in iRacing World Championship competition. They got one. Now it's a case of can they continue that form moving into race meeting number 3.
Yeah, that's going to be a big ask considering the level of this field. There are about, I would say, 10 drivers on a good day that can win one of these races. So it's a massive amount of competition that they're having to deal with, and it's and a lot of the races so far have been very qualifying dependent as well, at least at Zandvoort and Barcelona, where you can't really make that much forward progress during the races. Whether or not that will change here at Donington, I don't know, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. But saying the the good times that Red Bull have had, the good times that Redline have also had in recent times, though, it's Dane Warren, though, that's top of the point standings coming into this one, and he hasn't even got himself onto the podium so far this season. 2 7th place finishes at round number 1, a 5th and a 4th at round number 2 puts Dane Warren on 103 points, 4 points ahead of Brian Lockwood, who's only visited the podium once. So it seems like as long as you're consistent inside those top 10s, inside the top 5, then you're still going to have an absolutely amazing time in this championship. The driver that's had a race win, well, at least the closest driver to the front that's had a race win so far is Sebastian Jobe, and he's in 6th place due to a very poor showing at Catalunya. So there we go. The numbers speak for themselves.
Have you just stolen my race notes for today? Because that is literally the thing I was had next. I wrote a long document this morning. And the next thing I was going to talk about, Dane Warren, points leader, 4 points ahead of Brian Lockwood. Then I was going to talk about Josh Rogers in 3rd, in part because of a recovery drive last time out, and the fact that you've had no race winners in the top 5 of the championship. So, respectfully, Connery, I am going to cite you for plagiarism. I know you've just submitted your university dissertation, and I will apologise for the ice cream van that some of you might be hearing in the background. Nothing I can do about that today, unfortunately, but there is a look at the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup Championship standings, and yes, it is Dane Warren who has not got a podium so far in this series, who's leading the championship with 103 points, 4 ahead of Brian Lockwood, and Joshua Rogers rounds out 3rd. Sindre Setsas in P4, Tori Erskard in P number 5. And that opens up, I think, a really important talking point, Connery, because we talked about this extensively last year, we must talk about it extensively again this season. The Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing doesn't just reward people who win races. Of course, you win a feature, you get $1,000 into your bank account. Happy days. But actually, the entire Supercup, the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup over the years, as well as the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup, they reward consistency. And those drivers who can work those opening laps, stay out of trouble, keep it clean, be consistent, are those who are going to be in the prize-paying positions come the end of the year.
Yeah, but at a circuit such as this, that's keeping clean is going to be very, very difficult. Even if you just look after yourself and not go for any risky moves, you're counting on the other drivers doing that as well, and that is certainly no guarantee. So this one is going to be more like touring car racing than a Porsche Cup racing. Let me tell you that. But it's going to be an interesting one, that's for certain. And I'm very interested to see how qualifying turns out as well, because that might be pivotal in terms of how things go here. Because if you start in the mid-pack here, then you're basically in the thick of things for all intents and purposes, and you have that desire to try and press forward and get towards where you think you should be, but everyone around you is trying to do that, which is why we do see a lot of instances in the mid-pack in these races. It's because people just get a little bit too ahead of themselves in the early stages, have that go-forward attitude, but it just clashes with everyone else.
Series commentator Martin Haven just asked me for a 99. That would be possible if I didn't then have to drive it all the way down to you and hopefully not pop a tyre on the way doing so. Of course, being a diabetic, any form of ice cream like that's out the window for me, so I would offer you mine if I had the opportunity. But it is Donington Park as a racetrack. You talked earlier on, Connery, about how, you literally are a bus ride away from there. I have been to Donington Park a number of times, both to watch motor racing, and also they have a rather large music festival that would normally actually be taking place in a couple of weeks' time. But this track, it is so underrated, and everyone always talks about Silverstone and Brands Hatch when they think about, great racing venues in the United Kingdom. There'll be others who will think about, the likes of Snetterton, so on and so forth, Oulton Park. Donington is one of those, hidden gems, in my opinion, of motorsport. It's a nice track to be a spectator at. It's a nice track to race at, but we talked about consistency in terms of the championship. This is a track where you've got to be really consistent in terms of your lines, and of course, iRacing and the way that they do things. We've got to talk about those dreaded slowdowns through Sector 1 if you put more than 2 wheels on the outside of the corner.
Yeah, you do have to be careful sometimes with the way iRacing enforces the track limits. You got 2 ways. You got the off-track incidents, so just an instant point to your record, and of course, you do have those slowdown penalties as well that you have to be concerned about. And you don't want one of those slowdown penalties on the first lap of these things, because the slowdown penalty on a first lap is a lot more severe than on the next couple of laps. So if you get one at the early stages, you're going to have to lift way out of that throttle and let basically the entire population of Derby through and get yourself back to the back of the field. So you certainly don't want to be doing that. But at the same time, you want to be making up positions on the first lap. So it's trying to strike that balance between being aggressive and being having a go forward attitude, and also the race conservation part of that as well.
Paul Smith, among other things, is our resident UK driver extraordinaire. And Paul, you have run at Donington in a number of cars over the years, and talk us through that first sector in particular, because it looks easy if you're looking at a track map. When you get there on track, it's far more complicated.
Absolutely right. So you've got to get your braking right for Redgate turn number 1, because you then need to carry the speed out of that corner to take you through Hollywood and downhill. And people don't realise just how steep and undulating this track is. It is You have to be there to see how steep it is. You plunge downhill through the crane of curves, and the left-hander at the crane of curves is really tricky because the track does just drop away. Your car wants to push out wide, but you don't want it to do that because you need to be over to the left-hand side of the corner of the track to get your line right going into the old hairpin. A sweeping right-hander, you want to try and carry as much speed as possible. You can just get 2 wheels over the edge of the inside of the curb, but any more than that you will get yourself a slowdown penalty as implemented by the iRacing service. You're running out wide over the curb on the exit of that, and then that progresses you up towards the second half of the lap underneath Starkey's Bridge up towards McLean's and Coppice. But that first part of the lap, going through Redgate and down through the crane of curves into the old hairpin, you can set somebody up at the Redgate and finally get the move done on the exit of the old hairpin heading up towards McLean's. It's one of those tracks where you have to think about your overtaking manoeuvre before you position people into the right place, get them where you want them to be, so you can get that run out of the old hairpin.
And the thing is, Paul, this isn't a Herman Tilke track. It's not that wide, and if you do get that slowdown penalty through sector number 1, you haven't really got many opportunities to actually take that slowdown penalty. Now, some of these drivers, especially those that's got more experience, will try and wait as much as they can, maybe on the exit of McLean's into Coppice, to try and then get to the outside line and take that slowdown penalty. There's various ways of doing so. The obvious one is don't just slam on the brakes, because that's never going to work. But actually trying to find the track positioning with 40 of the world's best sim racers all around you, that could be a contributing factor, in my opinion, to one of the big incidents we might see here today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the exit of McLean's. Get the car over to the right-hand side as quickly as possible, then slow it right down to serve your slowdown penalty. That is the best place for it, because by that point, especially on the opening lap, it's quite a wide section of the track, really. The cars are all naturally over to the far left of the course on the exit of McLean, so definitely it's best to get it over to the inside, slow it right down, serve your penalty, and then get back up and running again. That is the favourite place to do it. You can try and just sort of back off a little bit, lift the throttle and try and serve it incrementally over half of the lap, but you've got to define time to serve that penalty, and especially on the first lap. We've been talking a lot about it. We've not really sort of got into why it's more harsh on the first lap. The way that iRacing works, it judges a slowdown penalty, is that it will take your average of your sector times and work out how much time you have gained, and then penalise you that amount of time. Well, the problem is, on the opening lap, you've got no sector times put in, so it will give you a lot harsher penalty on that opening lap. So that's why it's important on lap 1, or if you haven't had a clean sector by lap 2 or 3 through certain parts of the track, you've got to be careful with those slowdown penalties for corner cutting. It seems harsh at the time when you do get it, and trust me, every driver who has driven around this track in iRacing knows what it's like to get a slowdown penalty on lap 1 around here. But these drivers, as we've mentioned, the 40 of the best drivers in the world of sim racing, I don't think it'll be a problem for them. They'll have worked all that out years ago.
Hopefully. Of course, some drivers, thank you very much there, Paul, some drivers have raced this track far more than others. I want to talk very quickly about from penalties to incident points, and there's 2 types of incident points, of course. Normally, the ones that you get in a race, but it's important to note here, Connery, that all of the races are reviewed after the race, and the iRacing stewards do a lot of great work to work out if there's a racing incident, if there's blame to be apportioned, and if so, who it's to be apportioned to. 2 drivers are already on 12 season incident points, Alexander Thebe and Matti Kaidagoja, and that will basically mean, Connery, if they get themselves 4 more incident points today, aka being responsible for 1 incident, they will get their first season penalty, and that will be the fact that they will not be able to qualify for the next round of the championship.
Yeah, that would be a big hit to their, well, not their hopes of winning the championship, because neither of them are in a position to be able to do that at this stage. What they're looking to do is try and get themselves inside the top 20 so they don't have to go through the entire qualifying procedure for next year. That's the objective for them, and if they, do have another bad race, finish near the back, and then get hit with the penalty as well, then that's going to put a massive damper on their chances of guaranteeing their spot here for next season. So they have to be on their very best behavior for the rest of the season now.
Yeah, qualifying will start in a couple of moments' time, and we're going to hand over to your commentators in a couple of moments' time. My final thought here, Connery, before we hand over to Martin and Paul, there's two drivers who I've got listed today who have raced here extensively on iRacing, being a part of various club-level series, and it's actually when I first started commentating on them, but actually also have raced here in real life as well. Graham Carroll, probably the most famous of these, but also Sebastian Jobe. And I think that after the miserable weekend they had a couple of weeks ago at Barcelona, they are looking to bounce back, and what a track for them to try and do so.
Yeah, I think they will have a very good opportunity here. We discussed this very topic in the support race with Paul, because usually in real world racing you say, oh, this is the driver's home track. They're from this country. They would have raced lower formulas, lower series here at these circuits. But at sim racing, that's perhaps a little bit less true. Of course, you're going to more gravitate towards the tracks that you know and love if you're from that country. But everyone has the same opportunity here to go racing at Donington on our racing. You just buy the track and you go out there racing. So there's not as much an advantage as the real life being from the country where the track is. So there's certainly an element of it, but it's not as pronounced as it is in the real world.
Well, that is going to be practice over for the drivers. Qualifying will be coming up next here on the third race meeting of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. So qualifying is just getting itself underway. And with that, let's head yourselves over to your commentators, Paul Matthew-Smith and Martin Haven. And Martin, breaking news, it looks as though we are down one very important driver here today.
Thank you, Will, and welcome everybody to Donington Park, the once home of the European Grand Prix and one of Britain's great parkland race circuits. I'm delighted to be back and ready for race 3 of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup for 2020. 2 races, 15-minute sprint, 30-minute main race here, Paul Smith, and the big name that is absent, it seems to be Max Verstappen. He has not been able, or has not decided, to get online with us here today.
Yeah, it is a disappointment for some fans. I'm sure that's the case, maybe. But to be honest, we've still got a 37-car grid of some of the best sim racers in the world, and one driver does not make a grid. They've got to have a whole grid of drivers to be able to compete against. So it's certainly going to be some excellent action out there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Donington Park is a great place for sports car racing. It's got overtaking opportunities, and as we saw with the GT4 Caymans, there are places where you can lean on a rival. Rubbing and racing go hand in hand. And here we're looking down at the Melbourne hairpin. This is quite a steep plunge downhill into a braking area. Pick a line, any line. So the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit in the heart of the East Midlands. In fact, it's on the flight path for East Midlands Airport. And in the olden days of telemetry, remember Hans Stuck once in a Group C race, having the tower from East Midlands Airport on his comms. That doesn't happen so much in this digital age, but it is a flowing uphill and downhill circuit. Start-finish line leads down into the first corner at Redgate, and that is where you set up a move down the Craner curves, hopefully into the old hairpin, which isn't quite as much a hairpin as rally fans would think, but as you come plunging down the hill, it is a big challenge to get the car and carry the speed all the way through Starkeys Bridge and up to the right-handers at McLean's and Coppice. Well, one of the key overtaking opportunities is this new loop that was added to bring it up to full Grand Prix strength or to Grand Prix distance. First of all, the Fogarty's S's, which brings you onto the Melbourne loop, and then the Melbourne hairpin itself. And at the end of that as well, as you climb up and around the pointy end of the pit lane, there's another great opportunity. But Paul, for racing drivers with blind brows, with petrifying runs down the hill, it is a real heart in your mouth moment occasionally when you're in traffic and it all starts to get a little bit close.
Yeah, I mean, I've not had experience in this car myself in races, but I have had plenty of touring car races experience, and trust me, in the middle of a pack, you certainly do have to have your wits about. You're on board with championship leader Dane Warren, downhill, as we mentioned, into the old hairpin, run it through the curb of the left there.
Really important not to carry too much speed into the old hairpin, because you always run out wide, and that sets you up through Starkeys Bridge and the Schwantz curve into the first of the two blind right-handers. Now, from this camera view on the roof, you actually can sort of see where you're going. In McLean's, you can't as a driver, and in Coppice, double right-hander, and it's this second apex that is absolutely crucial. Carry the speed through there, down the long back straight, past the exhibition centre where the Donington collection of Tom Wheatcroft's Grand Prix cars used to be. Hard on the brakes, down into second gear here. Try not to hit the little stacks there as you come through Fogarty's S's. And again, over the brow, you can see how steep the braking area is down here into the Melbourne hairpin. Pick a line, any line. You can attack and defend, narrow, wide, whichever you like. But here, you need to try and not leave the door wide open if you're being attacked to go through into Goddard's. Now, what he's done is really V'd the corner off there to get the run out to start a lap rather than to finish it. And if you use that line in a race, you may as well just park, put the handbrake on and go shopping, because you just be waving everybody through.
Yeah, that's an open invitation right there to any driver worth their salt. But yeah, really, but that's a key thing to actually see here in this qualifying session is how he's had to open up that final corner to really get the speed across the line. It's crucial when the field is so close like we have here today to get every little hundredth of a second out of these cars and out of this circuit. That's exactly what Dane has tried to do there. He's currently in 9th place, but of course that previous lap was affected by him taking that wide line. I will say about Coppice though, from when you're driving in the car, you cannot see that apex, that first apex curve that you must hit. That is crucial that you hit that first apex curve at Coppice, because that sets you up for the second part of Coppice where it really opens up and you can get on the throttle.
Yeah, you've got to hit it, but hit it too hard and suddenly you're drifting out wide. You miss that second apex. Our champion from last year is currently on top of the qualifying leaderboard. Josh Rogers, last year's champion, and he has 0.2 of a second at the moment in hand. He's currently lying third in the points. He's 13 behind our leader, Dane Warren, with Brian Lockwood in second place. And as you talked about a little earlier with Will, the highest of our race winners in the standings is Sebastian Jobe, one of the local boys here. He won race 2, the main race in Zandvoort, after the first race was won by Graham Carroll. But actually our race winners, including Max Benecki, who won both races in Barcelona, they are 6th, 8th and 9th in the championship. So it's been consistency. And we talked about this right from the very beginning in Zandvoort. Score points. Coming from behind in a race is tough enough in a field that this is close. In a championship, if you don't score points in the first weekend, that follows you through the remainder of the season. All 10 races, you'll be trying to catch up, or in fact, all 20 races. So 6 minutes, 20 seconds still on the clock, Paul. Plenty of time to get some more quick laps in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dane Warren is second in qualifying. Of course, don't forget the top 8 get inverted for the opening race. So yeah, they may be getting the fastest times in, but they're going to be starting Dane in 7th and Josh Rogers at the moment in 8th. Max Benecke, 3rd place, of course, double winner. He's only the 3rd driver to get a double win in this championship in the 2 years that we've had it. Martin Kroenke and Sebastian Jobe are the only other 2 that have managed to achieve that in this series. So Benecke did a fantastic job last time out, and it was great to see him bounce back from the first round at Zandvoort. But we talk about Dane Warren being consistent. He got 2 7th places, a 5th, and then a 4th in the opening 4 rounds of the championship. So he's been up there competing at the front.
And as long as you're in the top 10 in qualifying, you know you've got pretty much the pace you need, and you're in that top 10 on the grid. And of course, that's where the bulk of the points are going to go. So as you say, Josh Rogers, fastest lap. That means he knows he's got the quickest car. But there is a balance here, isn't there? Because at the moment, if we freeze that, he'll start 10th. But look who will start on pole position. The 10th fastest car at the moment is Graham Carroll, our sprint race winner from Zandvoort. So
well,
you've got to be
top
somewhere
8
in there. Top eight,
sorry. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anderson would be starting on pole at the moment.
Yeah. But in there as well, you've got Usgaard, Castrolado. Now, that's a surprise. Ricardo Castrolado, 10th in the sprint race in Zandvoort, but has not been... Oh, he was 12th in the sprint race in Barcelona, but in the main races, he's had trouble and he has not scored a single point since that sprint race in Zandvoort. So really important that he hangs on to that, and most important of all, does not get tangled up somewhere in the race to drop himself out of the points. So Ricardo Castrolado has really got to capitalise on this good qualifying performance to reinvigorate his championship.
He's a really good driver. I mean, I say that about everybody on this grid. They're a really good driver, you know. But he's one of those drivers where you can feel confident if running side by side with you, because he will leave you just enough, and I mean millimetres, just enough room to have too wide through corners. So Castrolado is one of those drivers that whenever I have crossed paths with him, yes, he's considerably quicker than myself, but he can race fairly as well. It's Patrick Holtzman actually up into 8th place now.
So what you're saying there, Paul, is he's very polite as he goes by.
Yes. Yes, he gives you a little wave. He goes, thank you. Yeah, it's like the touring car drivers used to. Thank you very much.
That's my actual racing career in a sentence. They're all very nice as they go by me. So we just saw Brian Lockwood completing the lap there. Only got him up into 16th position. So he and Sindre Setsaas, you know, they're 2nd and 4th. They need a little bit more pace. Carroll needs a little bit more pace. He's down in 9th in the points after an opening weekend that gave him a win and a 2nd place. And it's been Josh Rogers with the fastest lap still, 3rd and 4th, or 4th and 3rd, more accurately in Zandvoort, 37th. So he had real trouble in the sprint race in Barcelona, and then only recovered to 15th place. So he didn't have a great second race weekend, Josh Rogers. Didn't have the most brilliant first race weekend, but consistently scoring points is going to be absolutely key. Alejandro Sanchez, twice 8th in Zandvoort, and then 6th in Barcelona sprint race, and 22nd in the main race. So you can see where the consistency is there. It's that 22nd place that has cost him a pretty decent championship position. He's down in 10th place, whereas if he finished in the top 10, he might have well have been in the top half dozen by now. But he's got pace here again, and that's important for him.
Yeah, it certainly is. And he was somebody who impressed me on the second half of the championship last year was Alejandro Sanchez. He really did come into his own. He didn't quite have the consistency or the in the races, and didn't always seem to get involved in some sort of incident. But he has pace there. He knows he's quick. It's just tying it all together and making it work in the races.
Anybody who's on a lap now will get to keep it. Anybody who's coming out of Goddard's will get to start another one. As we're into the final 15 seconds, plane going overhead from East Midlands. That's a rare sight these days, isn't it? Isn't it strange how when you hear a plane in the sky, you look up, oh, that's a plane.
Yes.
Those are the times in which we live. So the clock counts down to 0 and qualifying is done. And that means that our Reigning champion Josh Rogers is the man again with the fastest lap, as he was in qualifying in Zandvoort, as he was in qualifying in Barcelona. But Alejandro Sanchez and Sebastian Jobe, who aborted a lap, I think, to try and avoid improving, that's row 1. Ricardo Castro-Leda and Tommy Usgaard, row 2. Patrick Holtzman and Max Benecki, the double winner from Barcelona, getting his season firmly back on track in Spain. That's row 3. Points leader Dane Warren and reigning champion Josh Rogers. Last year's top boy and this year's current top boy are row 4, ahead of Alexei Usiakala and Alexander Tiber. Mac Backham and Josh Anderson start on row 6, ahead of Christopher Dambeats and Jeff Giassi. Graham Carroll down on row 8 with Brian Lockwood. They didn't quite get the laps they needed, but they're ahead of Sindre Setsource and Jamie Fluke on row 9. And 19th and 20th on the grid, David Williams and Bobby Zelensky. Thibaut Casubon, the youngest driver in the championship, with Martin Kronke on row 11, ahead of Gerger Huttu and Valtteri Alander on row 12. And we complete our grid with the 37 drivers who will hopefully make the start. Johan Hart and Mark Perez, row 13. Jeroen Boutellou and Kevin Ellis Jr., row 14. Jack Sedgwick, Marcus Jensen are on row 15 of the grid for the sprint race here in Donington Park, followed by Antoine Higuelin, Matti Kajisoda, Mitchell de Jong, Carl Janssen, Jonas Valmeyer. Good to have him back after missing Barcelona, and Thomas Tuhatel. So we are ready to go racing here on the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit for the sprint race, round 3 of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup for 2020. £200,000 prize fund at the end of the season. First race is about to get underway. Looks like a good launch off pole position for our pole sitter Alejandro Sanchez. Watch Sebastian Jobe go out wide here. Now you can run all the way around Goddard's, and then as you go over the crest in Hollywood, try and take the initiative, and he does exactly that. And that's a great move, Paul Smith. Sebastian Jobe takes the lead as they sweep down the Craner curves. It's too wide behind.
That's his experience of making race starts here coming into play right there. You can make that move stick around the outside of Redgate, and that's exactly what he's done. But the lead two already pulling away a little bit from Castro-Leda, who's in 3rd place with Usgaard, and Max Benecki right behind him. Everybody seems to have got away cleanly so far. I say so far because we've only got halfway around the lap, but definitely these drivers are just taking it easy whilst the tyres are still coming up to temperature and pressure.
And here's the first big test of those brakes, the huge stop as you get down into the Fogarty's S's, named after Britain's multiple Superbike world champion. As you say, Castro, oh, and there's trouble behind, and that's Graham Carroll, surely the other Red Bull car. And Holtzman as well. So Carroll in real trouble, the man who lies 9th in the championship, won the sprint race in Zandvoort.
And that was the championship leader, Dane Warren, involved in that one as well. It's actually Patrick Holtzman and Dane Warren coming together there. We'll get to see a replay down into the chicane on the brakes. And what happens? Oh, it's contact. Patrick Holtzman's got nowhere to go. Then, separately, Warren gets tipped up upside down there.
Well, huge drama as ever at the Fogarty's S's. On to lap 2 then. And our race-leading duo, Sebastian Jobe and Alejandro Sanchez, starting to creep away a little bit from Castro-Leda in 3rd place. So Ricardo Castro-Leda, best result this season, 10th place in the sprint in Zandvoort. And it's now a 3-way battle for the final podium spot, because he's got Usgaard and Benecki with him. But that little tangle at the beginning of the old hairpin, the Melbourne Loop last time round, has utterly split the field.
Yeah, there's about 3 seconds between Benecki and Rogers, so 2 championship contenders are quite split apart in terms of time, but not in positions. We've still got 2-wide action further down your field, as well as car 9, that's the Johan Hart having issues in the Apex Racing Team car. That's at McLean's, and well, I have a funny feeling that 2-wide action he was involved in may have got helped off the track there.
Yeah, 2 wide as in the number, and also in 2 wide. Somebody out braking themselves down at the Fogarty's S's, goes off into the gravel with nobody else involved. That was Jamie Fluke, we gather. And here looking at number 23, Alexei Usiakala, the Finn. And he is down at the tail of, well, outside the top 15. So Usiakala struggling for pace. He got shuffled back. So Sebastian Jobe, the race leader from Alejandro Sanchez. Ricardo Castelletto lying in third place, and a little three-way battle, and then the gap back to Josh Rogers, the champion, and behind him a huge queue of cars, and again 2 wide through Hollywood on hot tyres. That's pretty impressive stuff. Down into the old hairpin, sweeps the field. 29, the core racing car, that's Carl Janssen. Again, as you can see, Janssen down the order. So we're looking here for the recovery drive from Graham Carroll. Number 21 machine, the Red Bull car. On the outside, 71, Jonas Valmeyer. Valmeyer had technical issues back at home, couldn't join us on the grid for Barcelona's races, so he goes down the inside. 2 wide, 3 wide. Carroll's in the dangerous position. Somehow he squeezes through. Valmeyer, I think, also picked up a spot. 29, Carl Janssen just ahead of them. There's Valmeyer. Battle on the brakes with number 4, Marin Cholak. And Cholak gets a little bit of argy-bargy there, and that didn't help the 71 car at all of Jonas Valmeyer, as he's being passed around the outside. Let's take a look at our Vodafone replay.
Yeah, it's down into that Melbourne loop then, and it all just concertinas up, as we've seen time and again, and Valmeyer just getting caught up. It slows down Cholak into the back of him and gets slowed down, spun around, and he's dropped down. If somebody is used to pack racing, it's Marin Cholak, that's for sure, from his touring car days, but he is having a little bit of issues in this week, but Jonas Valmeyer seems to be having some issues himself, dropping down the order here. He doesn't seem to be that comfortable behind the car at the moment.
He's a little bit of a stopper in the bottle, isn't he? Currently, he's being chased by Marc Perez. So the Spaniard trying to find a way through, the Catalan driver. Last time out, we were at his home circuit, Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. And he is chasing hard. Sebastian Jobe out front by just 0.7 of a second from Sanchez. And we look a little further back. This is Max Benecki. He has finally been caught. Josh Rogers, fastest man in qualifying by a couple of tenths, and that has shown. Look, he's left the 92 car.
Nice.
No, he's closing in. So that's Usgaard. So Benecki's got by Usgaard, hasn't he? Because he was on the tail of the queue. So
yeah, he was.
Red, white, and black cars confused.
Yeah, he's made his way past Usgaard then on that lap and got ahead. Usgaard won't give that one up though. He's a bit like a bulldog with a bone. He won't. He'll fight you off for that one. But down through the Craney curves. He's not quite close enough to make any moves yet, but there's still plenty of time. There's still over half of this race remaining. As you mentioned, Josh Rogers, he is slowly closing in on these drivers.
He's half the gap, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's only 1.5 seconds behind them now, so he's really getting the hammer down here.
Yeah, and he's in clear air as well. They're fighting each other, which slows them down a fraction, but when they're not actually trying to outbrake each other, those 3 cars together are just working a little bit more efficiently in the air than Rogers is on his own. So Castelletto, Benecki and Usgaard, but Rogers is closing in and he has left Anderson behind him. So there's no chance at all that Josh Anderson is going to catch him in that bright red 36 car. Josh Rogers is the man, I'm sure, with the fastest laps at the moment. Our leader, though, who is on target to claim the most points, and in the end, that's what counts. That is Sebastian Jobe. So on board with Rogers.
Yeah, Rogers does seem to hold the fastest lap at the moment at 27.3 compared to your leaders 27.5. Tommy Usgaard in front. Last lap before they crossed the line was a 28.0. So Usgaard has improved a little bit, 27.8, whereas again a 27.3 from Josh Rogers. He has got the bit between his teeth. He's wanted to gain on these drivers, and he is giving it everything to try and get enough of position.
I'll tell you what else, Sebastian Jobe has just gone in the last 2 laps from 7/10 to a full 1.1 seconds clear of Alejandro Sanchez. So he's found 2/10 on each of the last 2 laps on Sanchez. Jobe is now starting to stretch his legs away in front. And that's great timing because Sanchez is being caught by Castroledo, Bernecke, Østgaard, and here comes Rogers as well. So Jobe wants to be clear of what will turn out to be, in the last lap, undoubtedly, a 5-way battle for the other podium spots. Sanchez with the blue and turquoise at the moment safe from attack. Castroledo, though, with Bernecke right up behind him, is going to have to get a move on, or he is going to fall victim to Max Bernecke and lose that podium spot. And for Ricardo Castroledo, first podium of the season is awaiting, but he's got to hang on another 6.5 minutes, so that's probably another 4 laps in the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah, when you consider they're doing laps 1:27s, so they're just under the 1.5 minute mark. So yeah, you're about right with the amount of laps remaining in this one. But Sanchez, as I say, I've been impressed by him in the second half of last season, and he's had a bit of misfortune at the start of this season. But now he's in a good, strong position, second place. He did start in pole position, so he won't be happy losing that one at the start there. But Castroledo is slowly just reeling him in. He seems to have the quicker car, quicker setup. Maybe these drivers thinking about the longer race and getting the setups for the further into the race, as Dame Warren, we're getting reports, has had an incident right down at the back end of the field.
Well, that's not great for our points leader. He's got there by consistently being in the top 8. Let's take a look at the Vodafone replay. Well, 3-1 is not going to go here. I think we can predict what's going to happen. Dives down the inside. And contact from behind turns around that was a little unfortunate.
I think it was Gregor Hutu that ended up turned over there as well, so he's had to take a tour back to the pit lane. Number 3 down the inside. Great late braking move down into Melbourne hairpin for Setsos.
Yeah, Sindre Setsos have the strongest start to the race. He qualified pretty well inside the top dozen, but that now moves him up only into, what is he now, 14th place, 13th place. So Sindre Setsos, another classic Donington Park manoeuvre. And that is set up when you get a good exit onto the Melbourne hairpin through the Fogarty's S's and then around the Melbourne loop. That gives you the run up the hill into Goddard. So Sindre Setsos now setting sail to try and chase down car number 5, and that is Martin Krunke from the Viras Coanda Simsport team.
I'll tell you what, he's going to have a bit of a task on to catch up to Martin, because he's 2.5 seconds behind at the moment. So with less than 4 minutes remaining, I think it's a case of damage limitation now, just trying to pull that gap on Bobby Zelensky. But Bobby is under pressure now from Thibaut Casabon and also Alexander Thieb as well. So 2 drivers behind Bobby Zelensky, really pushing on and pushing hard as we get a split screen. We get to see 2 battles at once as Ricardo Castroledo a bit compromised through the Melbourne loop.
Yeah, he was, and so a good run coming up the outside, but again Castroledo with the inside line with the red and white colour, so he just hangs on, doesn't he? And that gives the 3rd place car a great opportunity to escape, and Alejandro Sanchez will take that with both hands. The 2nd place car, beg your pardon, as we watch the battle for 3rd. So Ricardo Castroledo clinging on there. Flash of the headlights further back in the queue behind Sindre Setsos. And you can see Sebastian Jobe has absolutely checked out here, hasn't he?
You will note that Ricardo Castroledo did a classic piece of defensive driving there. He was compromised into the left-hander at Goddard's. his line wasn't great, so he then he slowed it mid-corner just to cause Beneke to have to back off the throttle. That gave him the better run out of the corner and meant that he was safe going into Redgate.
Yeah, but as we've seen several times at Goddard,
Yes.
that is high risk. If you catch the driver out, then he's into the back of you, and of course then the stewards look at your throttle position and go, hang on a minute, you lifted mid-corner. How was he supposed to anticipate that? So you get turned around, he gets the position. Max Beneke, number 11, no contact yet, but he is now right behind Ricardo Castroledo, and they are almost on the back again of Alejandro Sanchez.
Yeah, they're gaining on him, but also Josh Rogers now, who's managed to make his way past Tommy Osgaard onto the back of Max Beneke. These two, they have no love lost between the two of these. I can tell you from past incidents in other events. So, you know, the gloves may well be off very shortly here, Martin.
Now, a minute and a half. Are we going to get one more lap? I think we might.
We should do, yeah.
We should do. The leader will be there with 10 or 15 seconds to spare, probably. So, Sebastian Jobe, well, he's not going to be able to slow down 10 seconds. He'll be the first one across the line. Alejandro Sanchez just ahead, 7/10 now ahead, that blue and turquoise car of this two-way battle for third. But will Josh Rogers be able to have a last lap lunge and make it a three-way battle for third? At the moment, he's not quite in touch as he's 7/10 back as they crest the rise into Coppice for what will be the penultimate time. Clock ticking down inside the final 60 seconds. I'm sure the leader will get to the start-finish line before we get down to zero. So Sebastian Jobe already in the Melbourne hairpin. There is Alejandro Sanchez, and deep in comes Ricardo Castroledo. Now he outbraked himself and gave it away to Max Beneke, trying to defend too deep. Beneke making sure he goes the long way round the outside. Max Beneke up to third. Ricardo Castroledo now having made that mistake. Josh Rogers will smell the blood in the water, and across the line for the final time in this race, Sebastian Jobe, the leader from Alejandro Sanchez, and with the changes behind him, Sanchez should be safe for second unless he bins it somewhere, but it's all up for third place.
Yeah, the third place is still wide open. Castroledo is all over the back of Beneke. Rogers is there as well. So there's plenty of potential there. Further down your field as well. Don't forget, in this sprint race, only the top 20 score points. So Jeremy Bootloop is the last of those drivers getting points, and some big names outside of the points. Graham Carroll, Brian Lockwood, Patrick Holtzman, Jamie Fluke, Dane Warren, Gregor Hooter. Some big names not going to be getting any points this race.
Well, Holtzman has only had one finish lower than 30-something, and that was 21st in the main race last time out in Barcelona. So he's having a shocker of a season. Sebastian Jobe is not. He's already been a race winner in the main race in Zandvoort, having finished 5th in the sprint, and he is on his way to the final corner. And as he rounds in front of the Tom Wheatcroft suite here at Donington Park, named after the man who turned this former Grand Prix circuit back into a Grand Prix circuit, the checkered flag is out. Victory for Sebastian Jobe. And across the line, Alejandro Sanchez and Max Beneke complete the podium. Ricardo Castroledo in 4th, Josh Rogers in 5th position. Not bad considering he started 10th place. So that's good news for his championship. A little further back, just looking at the battle behind Sindre Setsource. And coming across the line, there's number 23 car, Alexei Usiakala. He finishes down the order. That's slightly been the story of the last couple of races for him. He was only 19th in the main race in Barcelona after a couple of decent top 10 finishes. So here we go, Sebastian Jobe, our race winner in the sprint race here in Donington Park. Alejandro Sanchez, Max Beneke complete the podium. Beneke's 3rd straight podium visit. Ricardo Castroledo, Josh Rogers, Tommy Osgaard ahead of Josh Anderson, David Williams, Christopher Dambeats and Jeff Chiassi, the Brazilian, rounding out the top 10. And those two very close together as they raced in pack formation to the line. A little bit further back, we saw Sindra Setsource getting clear of Bobby Zelensky. And behind them, you have to look a long way down for some of our front runners. Dane Warren, Brian Lockwood, and Graham Carroll as well, also lost out very heavily in the first race here in Donington Park. Graham Carroll, the least bad of their results, 26th. That's a total write-off, basically. Dane Warren, last of the cars that was running on the final lap. So an utter disaster there for the championship leader, just as he was starting to build a little bit of consistency into his season. Paul Smith, you've got to put that behind you right now, no matter how good or bad you were, whether you were a hero or a zero, because race 2, twice the length, twice as difficult, is coming up fast.
Yeah, it is coming up fast, and these drivers, they've got a longer race, a 30-minute race, so plenty of time to make moves forward, and they don't have to be quite as fast and frenetic, although, to be honest, we want to see it fast and frenetic to keep it entertaining, that's for sure, but these drivers never hold back and never give us anything but entertainment out there today.
Well, they will undoubtedly be absolutely flat out. There's no hope of staying consistent in this field if you're not driving it right on the door handles. So that is exactly what they will need to do. In our 30-minute race, you start where you finished, and that is a real double jeopardy deal. So for Dane Warren, for Graham Carroll, for Brian Lockwood, not only do you lose points in race 1, but you start way back in race 2 as well. The good news, in the second race, the points go a lot further down the order, but they are very much fewer than if you're still up at the front. So this is a great chance for Josh Rogers, Sebastian Jobe, who came here 3rd and 6th in the championship, last year's 1st and 3rd place men, and Max Benecki from 8th in the championship, last year's championship runner-up. Great chance for them to add to their point score.
Well, thank you, Martin. Thank you, Paul. They'll be back in just about 5 minutes' time as we are going to have our Tag Heuer mid-race break. It's myself, Will Vincent, here, along with Connery Maddock. And Connery, you know, it's almost as though we know what we're talking about. Once every so often, we said lap number 1 was going to be chaotic. We saw a huge incident down at the S's, turn number 9, that basically took out of contention your championship leader in Dane Warren. We said that Sebastian Jobe was going to be strong here. Well, absolutely dominant, winning the sprint race here today. I will say it's been a case of good, bad and ugly for some of these teams, and it's going to make for a very exciting heat number 2, our feature race with, of course, prize money on the line.
Yeah, that was a great little preview for what we'll see in the feature race, but you're absolutely right about Dane Warren being taken out early. Just as we were in the pre-show singing his praises about how consistent he's been throughout the season, he gets tangled up in an early race incident there with Patrick Holtzman, who also has, he's kind of had the opposite season to Dane Warren so far. It's going to be yet another awkward one for him to try and take. So he's basically looking to try and keep himself in the series for next year now. I think a top 5, top 10 finish in the point standings has probably gotten away from him at this point. But I'm looking forward to this feature race. That's for certain. Good finishes for Benecki, good finish for Joshua Rogers as well, which has been kind of needed considering, at least for Josh, how poorly Catalunya went. So he's back on the right foot now, and Benecki continuing on his form from round number 2 with that double race win. But for Sebastian Jobe, though, a brilliant drive at the front of the field. He picks up a sprint race win for himself. It's actually his first sprint race win of the season. Of course, he had one other win that was in the main event of round number 1.
Yeah, and I'm very bad at maths, but I've got the feeling, having a look through the Heat 1 result, that actually Joshua Rogers has moved themselves to the top of the championship because of the fact that Brian Lockwood had such a disastrous race in race number 1, and the fact, of course, Dane Warren had such a disastrous race in race number 1. So, this is what we talked about in terms of consistency. Consistency is everything. And Connery, very quickly in race number 2, you can go for the pass down in sector 3, in sector 1, but do you really want to sacrifice a potential chance at a top 10?
Yeah, that's the thing. You just got to make those passes done very quickly and efficiently. You can't be stuck in a side-by-side battle for too long, because this track especially does punish you for doing so. It's it's much better to run of course the single racing line. It's probably one of the most obvious statements I'll make all day. But yeah, as long as you're maybe out just inside the top 10 here, you might still have a chance at a podium depending on how this race start goes and if everyone keeps things clean. But it seems like the final sector has really played a big feature in how the racing has gone today, and that's not entirely a surprise.
So, just a reminder that the second of our 2 races here today in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup is 30 minutes in length. More points, of course, on the line for this, but also prize money as well. $1,000 to whoever is victorious in this 30-minute feature race. And the sprint races, we often see more frantic activity because of those reverse grids for the top 8, the inverse grid for the top 8, but also because it's a short 15-minute race. This track, if you are methodical and consistent, this can really be a place for you to shine. You've got to make sure that you get yourselves a good starting position, a good launch off the line, of course, but then make sure you just keep it together and get into a rhythm for those opening laps. After that, you can start picking off the drivers one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. So expect to see Max Benecke settle into a rhythm. He could be fighting for the win at the end of this race. The same for Ricardo Castellado and for Joshua Rogers. There's a couple of other names in this mix. Joshua Anderson is one that stands out for me in P number 7. I've got a feeling that he, could be getting a top 5 at the end of this one. But with that, let's hand it back to your commentators, Paul Smith and Martin Haven.
Thank you, Will. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, let's get ready to rumble for this second main race. 30 minutes of fast and frantic action around the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. A beautiful East Midlands sunny afternoon and the perfect playground for the guys who scored strongly in the first sprint race. And at the moment, my maths has Josh Rogers leading on 108 points, Sebastian Jobe second on 105. Dane Warren came in here with 103 points, did not add to that. Brian Lockwood in second did not add to his 99. And Sindra Setsource has not got close enough. So I think Josh Rogers, Sebastian Jobe are our top 2. Jobe, the winner of the sprint race. There are 50 points, not 25, up for grabs in the main race. And points go all the way down to 25th place. So for those who lucked out, Dane Warren, Brian Lockwood and Graham Carroll, to mention just a few, there is a chance of redemption, but they are a long way down our grid.
Are we going to have like a maths battle between yourself and Will?
No, because I'll always lose. Anybody who's ever heard me talk about anything knows that my mental arithmetic is neither mental nor arithmetic. Never add up live on air, and God help me if I try and subtract.
But yeah, in all seriousness though, the fact that the points go down to 25th give those drivers who are starting further towards the rear of the grid that opportunity to just salvage something out of this race and out of this weekend, so it's not a complete total disaster. So don't write them off yet, but it's going to be tough, and we've seen how difficult it is to work your way through that pack, especially without getting involved in any instance.
Well, listen, it could be at the moment that our top 3 are covered by just 5 points. So bear in mind, every single point you earn could move you one position up the order. And this $200,000 prize fund, double what it was last year, does not all go to the winner. It trickles down as well. So every single point you earn now and in every race moves you a little closer up the order to the big money. All right, well, it's time now to take a look at our race grid, and they will start in the same order in which they crossed the line just a few minutes ago after the sprint race, and that means that Sebastian Jobe will be the man on pole position. He was on the outside front row in the sprint race and managed to get ahead of Alejandro Sanchez to take the lead of the race. Sanchez perhaps would have preferred to win it in the first corner, but he was damn sure that he didn't lose it in the first corner. So it's Jobe and Sanchez on row 1, Max Benecchi and Ricardo Castro-Ledo recovering his season on row 2. Josh Rogers, the points leader, and Tommy Usgaard on row 3, Josh Anderson and David Williams on row 4, and Christopher Dambeats and Jeff Gyasi on row 5. We'll scroll through quickly because we're looking for the men who were our championship leaders, and Graham Carroll down there, so too Brian Lockwood and Dane Warren. They've got a lot of work to do. I'm Martin Haven. Paul Smith joins me as we get ready for the main race here at Donington Park. Number 22 with the Red Bull livery is our pole sitter, Sebastian Jobe. Alongside him, blue and turquoise, Alejandro Sanchez, and away we go. And already a big jump away at the start. On the outside and down on the grass, looked like a good getaway for Christopher Dambeats. He might have picked a position up, but through into second place goes Max Benecchi. Really important for him and his championship hopes to get ahead of Alejandro Sanchez early on. And Josh Rogers is right in the mix, looking as the top 6 start to break away to the old hairpin, Paul Smith, to try and get onto the podium again.
Oh, Benecchi was a little bit fast into the old hairpin there, compromised his line. That's going to put him under pressure from Sanchez, who's going alongside him. Sanchez not giving this one up. Contact between the two of them. Benecchi's off wide at McLean's, and before you know it, most of the grid are making their way past him.
Oh, that's going to really sting, because he's got another 29 minutes of fluent swearing at himself for that error. He's dropped behind Jeff Gyasi, who was at the tail of the top 10, so that's how far he has dropped. Sebastian Jobe with a handy advantage, and the stopper in the bottle is that blue and turquoise number 47 car of Alejandro Sanchez. But for how long? Because right behind him is last year's champion 92 Josh Rogers, piling on the pressure immediately. 3 wide, yeah, that'll work.
It always works on lap 1. How dare you question them? It's absolutely fine. See, they've managed to get through cleanly without any contact whatsoever. But I think that's more by accident. It's more by accident than by design, that's for sure. But again, through Goddard's, it's tricky to get through that safely. And one driver, Anderson, I think it was, just getting caught out in all of that.
Number 3, Sindre Setsource, getting away from them, and Martin Kronker with the white and green, number 5, he is just behind, so Setsource sort of covered himself in butter there and slipped through. Sebastian Jobe leads the field down the Craner curves for the second time. The camera makes this look relatively flat. It is relatively not at all. Let's take a look at this battle. Benecchi goes inside, and you said he just made the move too early. There was contact there in McLean's, and he lost out big time.
Yeah, it was and that all started at the old hairpin. He carried too much speed, as you mentioned at the start of qualifying. If you carry too much speed through the old hairpin, you run out wide, and it compromises you all the way up there, up into McLean's, and that's exactly what happened there, and it's pushed him all the way down. He's now 9th place, so he's managed to be ahead of Sindre Setsource, and he's only right behind Jeff Gyasi, who's in 8th place. In fact, make that up into 8th place for Benecchi now, as well. Look at this, Sanchez and Rogers side by side into the Melbourne hairpin.
Well, Sanchez defending almost before he was out of the Fogarty's S's. He was so early to go down the right-hand track just to shut that door to Josh Rogers. So for Sanchez, he's gone from the frying pan to the fire, hasn't he? Last year's championship runner-up was attacking him. Now last year's champion is the substitute, so he's having a go as well. Josh Rogers in the red, white and black 92 car in 3rd. Ricardo Castro-Ledo in 4th position. 24th in the points coming in here, Ricardo Castro-Ledo, with 1 top 10 finish in the first race in Zandvoort. So Ricardo Castro-Ledo on fire here in Donington Park. 5th is Usgaard, 6th position Dambeats, then Williams, Benecchi and Gyasi. Setsource now on the Brazilian's tail at the back of this long gaggle of cars.
I will say it's great to see David Williams up there in the top 8. The Englishman has not always had the best of luck in this series, and great to see him up there challenging as we look back. And it's once again Jonas Vollmeyer with Johan Haaf, Matt Perez, Brian Lockwood, Jack Sedgwick, Dane Warren. They're all together in a queue as Vollmeyer going very defensive into Coppice.
Well, that's not going to work. If you're offline in Coppice, you are dead in the water down the straight that follows it. And that's really important for Brian Lockwood. Don't forget, he came in here just 4 points off the series lead, and he needs to get every single point he can. Number 10 car down the inside, Jack Sedgwick. Did that work for him? Well, he survived the chicane. I think he did get by, didn't he? That's Dane Warren right behind him as well, the man who was our points leader coming in. So they're starting to work their way back up into the points, and again, it may not be a lot, but it's better than a 0.
Yeah, as once again Vollmeyer having to go, well, he's going somewhere on the track here, and he's not having the best of luck here as we look at Brian Lockwood, but behind them Vollmeyer and I believe that's number 10, that's Sedgwick, side by side into Redgate. Now it works on lap 1 at the start with cold tyres around the outside, not so much this time. And here comes Warren then. He's trying to get involved in this one because he knows he needs a few more places before he starts scoring points.
Yeah, Dane Warren in the 57 car with the turquoise wheels. He's just got to keep knocking on the door. He's got to be cautious, but not too cautious. Patience is a virtue, though, when you need the points, and he does need the points. Oh. So we cut back immediately to Thibaut Casubon. He's in 16th place, chasing Jeremy Bouteloup, his compatriot. Cabizon 2-1-1, Bouteloup 2. And they are 15th and 16th behind Kevin Ellis Jr. Kevin Ellis Jr. in the 98 car just turning there into the Fogarty's S's. They've lowered the curbs there in the last 2 or 3 years, so you can really ramp the car over those curbs. It used to punch the suspension through the inner wings, frankly, in the old days. But
I remember seeing the old tyres set into concrete there as well to discourage you from cutting the chicane. So it has improved safety-wise, but I'm sure the teams are appreciative of not wearing out suspension parts as well.
I'm sure the drivers as well, because if you hit a tyre stack, it tends to rip the entire side off the car. Somebody's got turned around behind as we watch the progress of
Vollmeyer.
Of number 21, Graham Carroll, who's a little bit ahead of that battle that we were watching. Graham Carroll working his way up the order. How far has he got? Is he in the points yet, Paul, as they sweep down the Craner curves?
Graham Carroll, 19th, so yes, in the points, so he's getting some points. Here we go, looking at Vollmeyer and Jack Sedgwick it was, and Sedgwick, I believe, has been involved there.
And on the inside is Dane Warren, and he gets 2 places.
Yeah, these cars, they seem to shovel the way through. They have got quite a low nose on these ones, and if you get them the wrong way, it just seems to push the car over. But, Graham Carroll has moved forward. Dane Warren, 28th, so he's still out of the points, along with Lockwood as well. But looking at this battle as well, this is for 6th place. Dan Beats and David Williams.
19th place in the points coming in here, Christopher Dambeats and David Williams, as we said, down in 27th, 28th position. So Christopher Dambeats, whose best result was last time out, the main race in Barcelona, top 12 finish in 12th position. But for David Williams, it's barely in the top 20. British driver, but now lives in Germany, does all his sim racing from there. So he's moved to be closer to his teammates, and of course, you know, with young racing drivers, particularly in the junior single-seater categories, that happens all the time, and they learn off each other, they feed off each other, and sim racing will be absolutely no different whatsoever from that. So 6th position up for grabs maybe here, but he needs to get a good run as they start to head back towards the long-ish Starkey Straight. Down towards the old hairpin, looking further back in the order. And there is the blue car of Mark Perez. Catalan driver under pressure. Brian Lockwood behind him. Again, important that Lockwood makes progress. So 27th place, Brian Lockwood. Couple of positions from the points, and one of those positions at least falls into Lockwood's hands.
Yeah, Johan Hath got assisted off the track, shall we say, there at Coppice.
And David Williams has made the pass as well. He has got by Christopher Dambeats. And Hart will probably not do too well when that goes upstairs to the stewards, will he? I'm not sure they're going to take a great deal of arguing there. Behind this little battle, number 11 closing in, Max Benecki. So Williams, Dambeats and Benecki now. That is a three-way battle for 6th position. And Sebastian Jobe, 1.5 seconds clear.
Yes, we'll look on board then. Benecki down in towards the Craner curves. Look how the track just drops away there. And you've got to keep it to the left here. Open up the right-hander at the old hairpin. Try not to take too much. And again, Benecki getting caught out by the old hairpin, running out wide into the dirt. I don't think Jonathan Palmer will appreciate that. He loves his grass being immaculate. But anyway, through McLean's, it's costing him time. All of this grass tracking here is just costing him time.
Well, Paul, we're riding in the passenger seat and we're barely on the track. So,
Yeah.
you know, his two wheels are all over the dirt. And obviously, you know, the days of racing on dirt tracks are long gone because tarmac's got more grip. As Doc Hudson says, stay on the grey stuff, kid. That's what it's there for. Here's our battle for second place then. Alejandro Sanchez, 20 minutes remain of this 30-minute race. He's held off Josh Rogers so far, but Rogers will be starting to get a little bit frustrated because Sebastian Jobe is now a second and a half up the road, 1.6 seconds, and it grows with like a tenth at every part of this track. So he's pulling away from Sanchez in second and Rogers in third. There is one. Rogers is clear from the Castroledo and Usgaard battle, so he's got to get on with this, because if Castroledo and Usgaard don't try and fight each other and work together, they can close in on this little battle. Josh Rogers was the fastest car in qualifying. Now's the time he needs to show that he's the best racing driver and get by Alejandro Sanchez.
He wasn't the fastest driver on that last lap, that's for sure, because that was Sebastian Jobe, a 27.7 from Jobe in the lead, a 27.8 from Sanchez, and a 27.9 from Rogers. So you just get the feeling that Rogers is just getting a little bit held up here in third place. One thing to note as well is the track temperature has increased by 3 degrees. It's now 32 degrees Celsius down there on track. In fact, there you go. There you get to see it in imperial measurements as well. So it's not the hottest track temperature that you'll ever experience, but it will have an effect on the tyres towards the end of the race.
It's interesting, isn't it? Sanchez is definitely holding up Rogers, so there's no way he's going to be as quick as the leader, but he lunges to the inside. Sanchez thought the danger had passed. Rogers, patient as ever, piled the pressure on and makes the move for second. And now we're going to see who's got the quicker car. Sebastian Jobe has been fastest so far, but he's only got 2 seconds clear. Let's see what it is at the line. And the mark is 2.13 seconds. That's first to second. We're going to have to follow that closely. Looking up the inside, 66, Gerger Hutu. And that was cleanly done.
Oh, he's pulled over to the side there, actually. He's letting the car through, so he's letting Fluke through.
Was
so
there
Fluke,
a little bit of contact maybe at the old hairpin?
Potentially.
Yeah.
You would imagine that.
Gave
I
the
think
place back.
he's trying not to get a penalty is what that is,
Yep.
isn't it?
Absolutely right. Well, he's not on 12 points, but there are a couple of drives. Interestingly, up in 13th place, Alexander Tiber, he's on 12 points, so he can ill afford contact. Although he's just half a second behind compatriot Martin Kroenke, he's going to have to be very cautious indeed. Castroledo Usgaard, no move yet from Usgaard, and Castroledo not quite feeling as much pressure here, I don't think, as Sanchez has been. Sanchez now in third, and Josh Rogers starting to creep away. Gap at the last sector still 2.16 seconds. It was 2.133 at the line for Sebastian Jobe last time round, and it's back down to 2.133 at the end of sector 2. So how soon is Jobe going to catch traffic? Not for a while. He's got to continue to try and build that lead. Josh Rogers free now for 1 lap behind Sebastian Jobe, and the gap's gone out to 2.16. So Jobe and Rogers are holding their pace respective to each other, and there's still more than half the race remaining. So Paul Smith, long time still for Josh Rogers. Maybe he's got his car set up to be quickest at the end of the race. Maybe Sebastian Jobe wanted it to be quickest early in the race. We'll have to see how that balance pays out as the tanks lighten and the tyres wear.
Yeah, you could see on that graphic a moment ago that it was only 5.5 hundredths of a second the difference between the leader and second place in terms of lap time. So they are pretty even in how their performance are, but you can see the previous feature race results there as well for Joshua Rogers as he's going along. Beneke, he's battling side by side into the chicane. Not going to work out.
Just held on to that, didn't he? He had a big slide going in late on the brakes, desperately late on the brakes behind David Williams for 6th position. Didn't quite get by. He's got by Christopher Dambeats, so he's now up into 7th. Max Beneke, don't forget, had a shocking weekend. 37th and 27th in the 2 races in Zandvoort. Turned that around with, first and first in the 2 races in Barcelona. So that really set his season back on an even footing. And now he's trying to close in a 25-point gap to the leaders. And it's important that this race goes well for him.
I've been keeping an eye on the championship leader after the first 2 weeks of the championship, how he's getting on. 22nd he's now in his Dane Warren, so he's going to be scoring 4 points there. He's got about 1.5 seconds to Bobby Zielinski, the next car in front of him, but then in front of them is a bit of a queue of traffic, so if he can get caught up to Bobby and get past quickly, he has got the chance of maybe progressing forward that little bit more, as Beneke once again putting the pressure on into Coppice, getting that wide line, and do you know what? This one's got to work this time. Yeah,
not clear left, not clear right. The spotters would be shouting at each of their drivers, but Beneke's got the inside line here. Doesn't matter how late Williams brakes, he's never going to be able to come around the nose in such a tight chicane as the S is there. And so Max Beneke moves up another spot. That's a really important move for him, up into 6th position. Williams still not giving it up. David Williams, the British driver. But he now has company from behind with Christopher Dambeats. And Dambeats having been passed by Beneke, Williams having been passed by Beneke. Beneke's now going to try and check out and leave them to sort out themselves. And the battle with Jeff Gyasi, the number 7 car behind. Sindra Setsource is there as well. Car number 5, Martin Kronke. So it's a long queue. And Beneke has worked his way pretty much past all of them. Now he absolutely must leave them behind. He's not going to catch the cars in front, but he can't afford these guys, Williams, number 31, and the rest, to come on strong later in the race. Coming back to Graham Carroll, Red Bull car number 21. What's his position in our overall standings, Paul Smith?
He's, down in 17th, so Carroll working his way through the grid. He's got about 2 seconds in front of him before he gets to Thibaut Casabon. So he's got a bit of work and a bit of time. There's still time remaining though. We've just dipped under 13 minutes remaining in this race, and this is the point where you are going to starting to feel the effects of the tyre wear and the heat build up in these tyres now as we go and progress on towards the end of this race. So this is where different setups, different driving styles will then show in this final third of the race.
Yeah, kicking up the dirt there at the tail of this little queue. Mitchell de Jong, the car running out very wide over the curbs and onto the grass. But at the front of it in 17th place is car number 21. So Graham Carroll's starting to pull himself up the order. The Scot from Edinburgh in the Red Bull Racing eSport team. Teammate Sebastian Jobe from East Grinstead leading the race. Graham Carroll just trying whatever he can to mitigate against that big hole in the points that was the torpedo move on him, or that caught him out in the first sprint race. And it is double jeopardy. If you suffer in the sprint race, then you are jinxed for the main race as well, and you have a lot of work to do. If you have a problem in the main race, there's double the points, but at least you don't then have another race that catches up with you. 58, Tommy Usgaard. Usgaard in 5th place behind Ricardo Castro-Ledo. And the two of these coming in, Usgaard 5th in the points and Castro-Ledo 24th in the points. Ricardo Castro-Ledo only with 20 points from 2 sprint and 2 main races, and Usgaard was 61 points ahead of him as they started this Donington Park race day. So he can afford to let Castro-Ledo stay in front of him, but his problem is that Jobe and Rogers were, well, one was just ahead, one was just behind him. They're both going to score more strongly. So Usgaard, if he wants to take the lion's share of our huge prize pot of nearly $250,000, he needs to get a hurry on and try and get by Ricardo Castro-Ledo and then try and set sail after Ricardo Sanchez.
I was going to say, if they don't fight each other, they could potentially catch up to Alejandro Sanchez and push on for 2nd place, but I don't think they quite got the pace there between the two of them. They were about 7/10 of a 700ths, should I say, slower than Sanchez on that last lap. So they're about even between the two of them, but look at the gap between your front pair of Jobe and Rogers. 2.1. It's just stuck around that 2.1 second margin. They seem to swap lap times here and there by 1/10 or so. So Rogers is doing all that he can, but he's just not able to gain enough of an advantage to be able to really reel in your race leader Sebastian Jobe.
And the problem for Josh Rogers is he needs to be finding not 25 thousandths, he needs to be finding 25 tenths per lap, and he can't. Sebastian Jobe is just holding him at arm's length, and Rogers is in no way close enough to even contemplate trying anything. Unless Jobe's pace really drops off as we head into the final third of the race, then Rogers is not going to get close. However, bearing in mind the first weekend, the Barcelona weekend that Josh Rogers had to struggle through a little bit, then, you know, points now is really, really important. Alejandro Sanchez clears traffic and does so nicely. And actually, Sanchez pace, Rogers has been ahead of him for half a dozen laps, and he's only got 2 seconds away. I think Sanchez has got one of the quickest cars out there. He was holding Rogers up, but not by much. Rogers is in clear air. I'm not sure that Castro-Ledo and Usgaard, even working together, are going to catch Sanchez much before the very final lap. And that might not be enough time to do anything about him. So,
yeah. That was Yusi Okola backing that car in like a MotoGP bike, backing it into Redgate there. He tried to get that swap on Jamie Fluke. This is all battling over 29th. And look at him. He's wild through the corners there, but he seems to have the pace over Fluke. Oh, they almost make contact there.
Well, Fluke ran really wide at the old hairpin, and Yusi Okola chasing the throttle just a little too eagerly as they come over the rise in McLaren's. It's tighter than it looks from the external camera shots, and just spun the car up and away it all went. So Jamie Fluke was making mistakes, but Yusi Okola made a bigger one. So here is Jamie Fluke, the Apex Racing driver. Take a look again on the Vodafone replay.
They just got so close to, and he's already lost control of it going into McLaren's, hasn't he? He was looking for that inside line and realised that it wasn't there, tried to get out of it, and that just sent the back end round. Of course, this car, rear-engined, any sort of unbalancing of the car whilst you're turning, that ends up acting like a pendulum and just sends you round.
Exactly. You say to a 911, I've changed my mind. Oh, you don't want to survive this corner then? Okay, gotcha. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, luckily for Jamie Fluke, you know, if they'd been battling anywhere further up the order, it would have been just as lucky. Yusi Okola realised the gap was no longer there, and he actually spun trying to avoid taking Jamie Fluke out of the race. So that was a heads-up, gentlemanly piece of driving. It didn't help Yusi Okola, but at least he didn't end up with penalty points. And again, later in the season, that might be important as well. 18 and 24, Antoine Higuelin just ahead of Mitchell de Jong. These guys battling a little further down the order as well.
I think Mitchell will be disappointed with how this season has started for him, considering that he was one of the championship contenders last season, down in 28th in the championship coming into this round, this week of the championship. and it's not really gone any better for him either, has it? It's just seemed to be stuck in that second half of the grid and maybe not quite gelling quite as well as he did with the car last season.
Yeah, for some reason, either he's just not feeling it or he's just been plain unlucky, and you can be plain unlucky, and that's all there is to it. It's just not worked for him. Just notice Brian Lockwood up into 24th place, came in here 4 points off leader Dane Warren. He currently is going to earn 2 points for his weekend. Ouch. Still looking in 17th place at Graham Carroll. So again, he hasn't really made much progress. And you can see there number 7 Jeff Giassi just dropping a little bit away from Christopher Dambitz and from David Williams. They were very close together, but the Brazilian can't quite hang on to that pace. Behind him is the number 3 car, Sindre Setsource, and Martin Kronke in number 5. Mac Backham is behind them in 12th position. And then little gap back to Alexander Tiber. Flashing headlights from Backham.
Oh, you've not been introduced to the rule of sim racing, which is if I flash my headlights at you, please just immediately move over and let me pass. Yes.
Okay, Usgaard finally gets the move done on Castroledo down at the Melbourne hairpin. It is such a classic overtaking opportunity. And so Usgaard finally squeezing through. Norwegian Tommy Usgaard. Let's take a look at our Vodafone replay, Paul.
Yeah, so it's the run out of the chicane, and we've seen it time and again today. Get that inside line, brake late, not too late though. Hold your apex there, and Castroledo realised that, tried to take the wide entry in to get the cut back and run out of the corner, but it didn't just quite work out for him.
Yeah, must have carried too much speed into the S's there and gave it away. And that was full hashtag send it, wasn't it, there from Tommy Usgaard up to 4th place. Be interesting to see now if he can really pull away from Ricardo Castroledo. There's about 4 or 5 tenths between them, maybe 6 tenths between them now. Oh, Jeff Giassi under pressure. Or applying the pressure, I thought we saw. Meanwhile, a little further back down the order, Warren. 57, Dane Warren starting to close in as he moves up the points a fraction.
He's actually gained a place on Bobby Zelensky, so he's got ahead of Bobby now, so up into 21st, and Brian Lockwood is now putting the pressure on Bobby. So these two seem to be just working through the field together. They just can't be separated, can Lockwood and Warren?
You've got to get your head down and grind it out. You know, there's never going to be any gimmies unless there's a hailstorm and everybody else fails to pit or you don't pit or something. And that doesn't happen here, does it, at Donington Park? So you've just got to make sure that every time you make a move, it's clean and you don't lose out from it. If you don't gain the position, that's one thing. What you don't want is to spin or to have contact and then have a drive through, because that then means that all the hard work you've done for the previous 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes or whatever is all undone. We're into the final 3 minutes of the weekend here in Donington Park, and Sebastian Jobe still leads by over 2 seconds. I'm sure Josh Rogers now has mentally selected top gear. Second place is better than no place. Take the points, carry on. Next time out, we head to the Circuit de la Sarthe at Le Mans. It'll be a whole different kettle of fish, and he knows that he is gaining back positions in the championship. Yes, Sebastian Jobe is as well, but you can't alter what anybody else does. You can only alter what you do. So it's important for Rogers to consolidate here and get that position. Castroledo has now been caught by, or hasn't been caught, has he? No, he's ahead of Benecki and Williams. He's catching back up to Usgaard, so that might yet go for a last lap lunge down into the Melbourne hairpin, in which case stand by with your parts ordering sheet.
I just want to see a huge plume of smoke and a tyre being absolutely abused as he slams on into the brakes into the Melbourne loop. The classic view of race cars with a desperate lunge on a final lap. That's what I want to see from Castroledo. Give it a go, sunshine. You never know, it might work out for you. Although
actually, what might work better for him, because we saw that Usgaard was very good under brakes there. Castroledo closed right up into Goddard's that lap. Yeah. It might literally be a final corner shout. Last 2 laps, so we're in the penultimate lap of the race. Let's go on board. Riding with Ricardo Castro-Ledo down into the old hairpin. And again, you saw Tommy Usgaard going out very wide left to flatten out the old hairpin. Carry that speed because it takes you all the way up through the Schwantz curve and into the right-hander at McLean's.
You can see the different line that Usgaard was taking into McLean's there as well. Didn't really take it out to the left on the entry to that corner. So the different lines being taken by the two different drivers, obviously with how their setups are and how they drive as well, these cars coming into play in that.
All right, penultimate time through Foggy's S's and down the Melbourne hairpin. And it is not going to be a position where Ricardo Castro-Ledo is going to make a move this lap. He closes in on Tommy Usgaard, but Usgaard will be first on the throttle and will pull away. And for Castro-Ledo, do you have a last lap lunge for fourth, or do you hold on to fifth and not give anything to Max Benecke? Last lap of the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit for Sebastian Jobe, our race leader. 2.5 miles, 4.02 kilometers separate him from the checkered flag. Josh Rogers 2.2 back, making no progress in the final third of the race and more against our race leader. And Alejandro Sanchez, second in race one, looking for third in race two. And he's 3 seconds clear of the battle for fourth. So that looks nailed on for Sanchez. Podium gaps are big enough. The action's not going to come from here. But Paul Smith, it might come from Ricardo Castro-Ledo and Tommy Usgaard.
I tell you what, the Sebastian Jobe, he must be the king of the double headers, because if he does get it to the line and win this race, I'm not saying he is yet, it will be the third time that he will have got a sprint race and feature race double header win. So
wow,
he is the king of getting the two wins in this championship over the 2 years that we've been running it. So absolute hats off to him. It's been an imperious drive at the front there, and he's just not been challenged here in this race.
Well, this will be his third win of the season, his second in a main race. The checkered flag is out for Sebastian Jobe, and the driver from East Grinstead takes a double victory at home in the UK at the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. Josh Rogers in second, Alejandro Sanchez in third. There was no last lap lunge from Ricardo Castro-Ledo, but there's a move at Goddard's. On the inside, squeezing through successfully, Mitchell de Jong. Yes, he gets the place there. And at the line, a drag race. I don't think that's going to work in the favour of Dane Warren. So he didn't pick up another spot there. And a little bit of a down weekend for Dane Warren, who came in here as our points leader. He had not finished outside the top 8 or inside the top 3 all season. But Sebastian Jobe, well, he was 5th and 1st, and then 36th and 26th. He bounces back with 2 wins. Sebastian Jobe from Josh Rogers and Alejandro Sanchez is your podium. Tommy Usgaard, Ricardo Castro-Ledo ahead of Max Benecke. Then David Williams, Christopher Dambeats, Jeff Giassi ahead of Sindre Setsource by a whisker at the line. That's the top 10. We'll look a little further down the order for our former front runners. Graham Carroll finishing in 17th position, the best of those who were inconvenienced by race 1. And outside the top 20, the points go down just 5 more positions. Dane Warren gets points for 21st, Brian Lockwood for 23rd. They were 1st and 2nd in the points coming to Donington Park.
Thank you very much, Martin Haven and Paul Smith. And well, 2 race meetings in a row. We have ourselves a driver who wins both the sprint and the feature race. Last time out, it was Max Benecke. This time out, it was Sebastian Jobe. First place, late to flag. The important thing to note here was it's Will Vinton along with Connery Maddock. Connery, he didn't crack under pressure at all there, did Sebastian. And that's one of those things that people, have said over the years, myself, yourself included. But actually, he was under pressure from Josh Rogers the entire race. The lap gaps between them were minuscule, but Seb held a 2-second lead for pretty much the entire race. Didn't allow Rogers to really get into his mindset. Job done. Perfect race.
Yeah, absolutely. No complaints there as far as Sebastian Jobe is concerned, as, you know, it's a very, very comfortable drive at the front, despite, like you said, the pressure of having last year's champion trying to breathe down your neck. But to be able to keep that gap where it was, an absolutely fantastic drive. Yes, he did have Alejandro Sanchez as a bit of a rear gunner for the sprint race and most of the feature race, but, you know, to hold that gap where it was, you know, as soon as Josh Rogers got himself past that little bit of a roadblock of Sanchez, I'm sad to say, it just didn't phase him. You could see that on his relative. He could see the pass happen, and just didn't phase him at all.
And importantly for Joshua Rogers, he will leave Donington Park as the new championship leader. And that goes back to one of our talking points all day, Connery: consistency and making sure you finish races. Rogers had the opportunity at the start of this feature to do a lunge. He had the opportunity, I think, about 2 times before he did make the pass over Sanchez, but he chose to wait for his opportunity. And yes, whilst that might have put him on the back foot for the latter 2/3 of the race, he's now the championship leader. He's in the same position he was a year ago.
Yeah, indeed. So, you know, it's not a bit of foreign territory for Josh Rogers, not at all. So he's still very much within this massive fight for the championship. But credit where credit's due, though. I did kind of tell him off, Sanchez, for being the rear gunner, but he's not even part of Jobe's team, so he wouldn't have anything to gain by doing it. But Sanchez still had a brilliant race here today, and he now solidifies himself inside that top 10 in the point standings. So for the Spaniard, it's looking up.
I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee today, so that might mean that I've missed this one. But is this MSI Esports' best finish in this championship?
I think it would be, but I have to delve into the history books to be able to try and find that one out.
I'll tell you what, you go into the history books quickly. I'll talk for a moment whilst we wait for some drivers to come and have a chat with us. I think that the important thing to know is that the championship is completely shaken up after this race. And one of the reasons for that, as I bring in Paul Smith, is that there's 2 drivers who had a great start to the season who unfortunately just didn't have the race they needed here. And that was, of course, Brian Lockwood, who came in 2nd place in the championship coming into Donington, and then also Dane Warren, who was your championship leader. Both didn't have a weekend to remember.
Absolutely. You think Dane Warren getting involved in that incident in race 1 with Patrick Holtzman as well. Brian Lockwood just didn't really have the ultimate pace around here today. He started 16th in race 1, dropped back to 28th, and had to do a bit of a recovery drive. So, as Martin mentioned during the commentary, you still have to get those points. Every point matters in this championship, and they got themselves into the points in that 2nd race, so that is crucial for them to take forward into the next round at Circuit Les Serres.
We've got people number crunching exactly what the championship standings are. We will get them to you as soon as we possibly can. And with that, let's talk to your race winner. Well, he's a double race winner here today. Sebastian Jobe in the Red Bull Racing Esports car. You couldn't have asked for a better weekend than that after the misery you had at Barcelona a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that that went pretty well. Kind of unfortunate last week 2 weeks ago with Barcelona caught in a crash at the start. But yeah, this is nice to kind of continue on from how Zandvoort went. I think we actually had slightly worse pace than at Zandvoort, but things just fell my way this race or this weekend, and I got a bit more fortunate to qualify on the front row. And then, yeah, getting P1 at the start, and it was no looking back from there. Really could just grind out the consistent laps. I was very, very glad that this happened, though, because in practice I was struggling big time when following other cars. So I was praying that I ended up leading because that's where I could show my pace. But behind other cars, I was really struggling. So I'm glad it went this way.
I talked at the top of this broadcast about the fact that I've seen you in countless times at this racetrack in Club Series, doing laps in various different cars. And of course, this Porsche is a completely different beast to what I've seen you in previously around this racetrack. But how much does that kind of muscle memory and how much does that knowledge of having raced here on iRacing for so many years on a track that actually most people haven't run at that often, how much do you think that helped you here today, especially in terms of that consistency?
Honestly, I'm really surprised at how well it went. I was absolutely hating this track in practice. I know a lot of people were really struggling as well. It's a very, very difficult track to drive. It's, well, in this car, the way it handles over the chicane, it's incredibly bumpy, and you have to hit it at a perfect angle. Otherwise, you're going to lose a tenth, and it's very hard to be consistent with that. I don't know if it helps too much driving it before, because mainly I've driven it on the national layout, which at the chicane turns right instead of left. And the last sector on this layout is the hardest part by far. You know, you can nail the first half of the lap and then lose 3-4 tenths in the last sector easily. So kind of helped, but I wouldn't say it's a deal break, or it didn't help a huge amount, I think. But just because of the fact that it's on a slightly different layout, and I've not driven this layout a huge amount, I definitely would have preferred if we used the shorter one.
Well, next time out, we go to what will be for at least a couple of weeks the longest track that we've ever been to in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. Circuit de la Sarthe is, well, quite frankly and honest, a different ball game to anything anyone has raced in a World Championship Series like this. Is there a game plan? Is there any strategy that you think might come out?
I can say for certain it'll be a lot easier to pass than at other tracks, but I genuinely wonder if you overtake someone on the straight, they'll actually get back past before the end of the straight, because they're so long. So it's going to be a massive load of pack racing. I'd be shocked if anyone manages to break free. They'd have to have a very fortunate run of luck with people having problems behind. So I think it'll look good to watch. Lots of battling, and I don't know. You can have some great pace there, but it's going to be hard to show it for sure. So it's going to be a tricky one. It's like you said, it's completely different to what we've ever had before. So I'm not really sure what to expect at all.
Well, thank you very much. Race winner Sebastian Jobe in a Red Bull Racing Esports car, number 22, winning at one of his home tracks here at Donington. And we have, if I'm reading this correctly, got some championship standings, which we're going to show to you in a second. And Connery, you have got the update on MSI, and I'm not going completely senile.
No, you're not. It was, Alejandro Sanchez's best feature race finish. He did get a second place in the sprint race at the Nürburgring last year, but Alejandro Sanchez's best finish in the feature race here in this one. So, again, just another positive sign for Sanchez, as he's been pretty quick.
He has. And, of course, he will be taking home some money as well from this one. But the driver who is going to be walking out of Donington with the championship lead, I'm going to have to nickname him Mr. Consistency now. It is the Australian driver who now, of course, resides and races in Germany, just a little bit away from Cologne, Dusseldorf. Joshua Rogers, good afternoon.
Hey guys, how are you?
I'm okay, and you've got to be happier now you're back where you like to be, at the top of the timing and top of the championship standings. But the question really is, how was that playing on your mind this afternoon, knowing that you didn't have the best start to the season, knowing the fact that some of your rivals hadn't had the best race here today? How hard were you going for that win over trying to maximize points?
I mean, yeah, I guess definitely coming into the weekend, it was going to be all about just trying to score some nice, consistent points, trying to put myself at least on a little bit of a better foot than we were coming out of Barcelona. I think that that hurt things quite a lot. So, but no, look, honestly, overall, I can't be more pleased. I think once I got past Alejandro in the feature, it was head down, ass up, and trying to push as hard as I could to try and catch Sebi. I felt like I might have had a pace advantage, but as you guys saw, basically we were just trading hundredths every lap. So yeah, no, that was a fantastic battle. Even though we weren't, in direct hand-in-hand combat, I think there's still something special about trading laps so close to one another for the whole race. I think for the most part, I was checking the gap every single lap, and it was pretty much 2.1 seconds the whole way. So, fantastic job to him. It was, it was really, really fun to be in that one. But I think we're still, we've made good steps forward in not only setup, but also I think driving style for this car. I think that showed this weekend's all the cars from our stable were quite strong. So, looking forward to the next one. Obviously, Le Mans is going to be a bit different, but we'll see.
Talking about Le Mans, I have no idea how that race is going to go. It could just be absolute carnage and mayhem in terms of drafting. And of course, I've commentated quite a few Indy 500s where it is all about drafting and passing. But are you going to be approaching that race differently because it is such a misnomer compared to all the other 9 races in this season?
Definitely, yeah. That's one of those circuits and one of those races where you have to approach it a little bit more, not conservatively, but trying to be a little bit smarter with what you're trying to do, especially when you're battling people and such like that. When you say you're in a 3-car train and you've got like a second or a second and a half gap over the rest of the guys, if you start battling then and there, once those other guys get into the draft, then you've got like a 10-car train. So it's going to be a matter of trying to drive really, really smart and leaving it to the last minute. I think we always saw that for the BMW 120 races at Daytona. I think that was the case, as well as some other events. Like whenever you've got lots of drafting going on, you always have to approach the race trying to be a little bit smarter with picking and choosing your battles. But it's going to be interesting for sure. I think setup's obviously going to be very, very different for that one. We're going to be prioritizing top speed. So we'll see how things go, but it's definitely going to be in a different approach for that one.
Well, thank you very much. That is Joshua Rogers from the Virtual Racing School number 92 car. He sounds a lot happier than I'm sure he would have been a couple of weeks ago, Connery. But I also hear in his voice that he's not ecstatic, but I would almost call it contempt after this weekend.
Yeah, it's just a positive finish for him. There's no reason to be completely ecstatic about how things have gone, especially considering one of your contenders in the championship has been able to pull off the double here on this race day. So, Rogers, content is probably the best word for it.
Yeah, and actually you're stood by with the MSI Esports best ever finish in a Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup broadcast. That is Alejandro Sanchez.
Yep, Alejandro, very well done here today, especially considering how much pressure was piled onto your rear bumper. How were you able to deal with it?
Good evening. I don't know really, because today we didn't have the pace that we had at Barcelona, so it was just a matter of I got lucky in the qualifying because I didn't expect to be P8 and pole for the first race. So it was just a matter of staying on the track and making the least mistake possible. And I think we did pretty well.
Yeah, but it did seem like you were driving pretty comfortably out there within your limits as well. How difficult was it to try and keep Josh Rogers behind you, considering he is the champion from last season? Did that change how you drove that defensively, or do you just treat him like any other competitor?
I just wanted to pull away from, I think it was Ricardo and Tommy, so I didn't risk losing another position when Joshua overtook me, because I knew he was gonna overtake, because he was like 2/10 faster per lap, and he was also really fast on the hairpins, which is like the only point of overtaking of the track. So I knew he was gonna overtake. It was just a matter of when. I tried to hold him off as much as I could, but in the end he did it.
Yeah, things have gone well for you so far this season, with the exception of the feature race at Barcelona. Where are your aims for the rest of the season now, since you have, with this result, got yourself pretty comfortably inside the top 10? Is that where you're hoping to remain coming to the end, or do you think that this is just a little bit of early season luck?
Yeah, I think my main objective is to remain in the top 10 at the end of the season and also win a race, which is pretty tough. but yeah, I think we're doing a great job, and I hope to stay in the top 10 and hopefully get a top 5 in the end. I don't know.
Of course, we have the next race of the season take place at Circuit de la Sarthe, and that's going to be raced perhaps quite a bit differently to any other Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup race that we've ever had. What's your plan going into that, considering and keeping in mind that you don't actually have that many teammates around you in those positions you usually run in?
Yeah, I think qualifying will be key, as always, starting in the top 8, and then it will just be a slipstream race, which they are pretty unpredictable, so you never know.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very tough. It's going to be a thinking driver's race there. That's it's not necessarily going to be the faster driver that wins at the end of the day there. It's going to be the driver that's in the best position at the right time will be the one that comes home the victor in that one. But thank you very much for joining us, Alejandro, and good luck in the rest of your races.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the stream.
There we go. Thank you very much, Will. A great finish.
Yeah, it is. Third place for him then. And yet, that's MSI Esports' best finish in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. Let's have a look one more time, shall we, at the top 10, which will be coming up on your screen momentarily. Sebastian Jobe, after winning the sprint race, he also wins in terms of the feature as well for Red Bull Racing Esports. Second place, 2.4 back, it was Australia's Joshua Rogers. Alejandro Sanchez, the Spaniard, getting third place. Tommy Erskard and Ricardo Castroledo round out your top 5. Max Benecke in the Porsche 24 car had a couple of difficulties at the start of the sprint race and has been on a slight recovery drive since then, but he will be content, shall we say, with P number 6. David Williams in 7th place. Christopher Danbeat, Jeff Giassi, and Sindre Setsas are your top 10. Going to do the rapid fire takeaways from this race. Paul, I'm going to start with you. What's the one thing that you took away from this weekend?
About how this championship is always open and how it always can change at the turn of a corner. It really can just be wide open, and that's it's proved it once again, just how things can change in the championship with 1 week of the racing.
And Martin, this race we always knew was going to have chaotic parts to it. That is a complete understatement when we compare it to the next track that we're going to in Mythique Circuit de la Sarthe.
Yeah, and actually something to mention there is that the Le Mans weekend has now been moved from June the 13th because there is the 24-hour race at Le Mans happening that weekend. So we'll now be racing there on June the 20th, Saturday, June the 20th. So that's an important date for the diaries. But yeah, I mean, what a track to race on. You know, you can take all the others and whatever their positives are, racing on the full Le Mans circuit with the Mulsanne Straight, the fast run down to Indianapolis and everything. So much overtaking opportunity. And between now and then, in the next month, they are going to have to practice their slipstreaming like never before.
And Connery, in terms of that race, in a couple of weeks, you alluded to it when you interviewed Alejandro Sanchez. It's going to be very interesting to see how the teams work together within their own units, and to steal something from another famous commentator in another famous series, co-opetition.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the main thing. If you're in one of these teams, though, that does have a good couple of drivers in these events, you're talking about Redline, you're talking about those Coanda cars in the various forms that they've taken. You've got Red Bull Racing Esports as well, having a handful of drivers in this, then those drivers are going to be able to work together just that little bit better than if you're just someone like Jack Cedric, for example, who's the only representative for Inex in this particular event. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic in that race for sure, and I just can't wait for it because it's going to be so different to everything that we've seen so far over the 2 years that this series has been running.
So, as Martin very carefully reminded us, it's no longer June 13th, it is June 20th for the 4th race meeting of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. And don't forget, immediately before that, we also have the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. And with that, it's time to say goodbye. Thank you to everyone that's been a part of our broadcast again here today. Martin Haven and Paul Smith in terms of commentary for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, as well as Paul Smith and Connery Maddock for the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. To Arjuna Kantapati and to Tyler Maxton working behind the scenes, as well as additional support from Cisco Scaramuza. My name's Will Vincent. I'm not good enough to get a graphic on the screen, but I'll tell you one thing, we'll talk to you all in just a couple of weeks' time, June 20th, as we go to the craziest race of the season, Circuit de la Sarthe. Goodbye from Donington.